Okay, the mics are on.
I'll call this meeting to order. It's a meeting of the Seward City Council, Monday, December 18th at 7 p.m. Chief, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Okay, roll call. Finch. Here. Osenga. Here. Calhoun. Here. Wells. Here. Barnwell. Here. Kreitz.
Here.
And Mayor McClure.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We now have citizen comments on any subject except items scheduled for public hearing. You'll see there are 3 public hearing items coming up. You'll have 3 minutes each, and those that have signed in will get the first shot at it, and then I'll take hands. And there's 36 minutes total time for this. So, Mr. Clerk, who do we have?
So there are 8 people signed in to speak. First on the list is Russ White.
Hello. I wanted to come down and just talk about...
So the thing I didn't say, we need your name and if you live
sorry.
inside or outside the city limits. Sorry.
I'm Russ
realize.
White. I live outside city limits. I work for Parks and Rec, as many of you know. I just wanted to go over some of the things that we have coming up and some of the things we've done. Because I think we have a really awesome staff right now, and we've been able to do a lot of cool stuff. It might be a lot of stuff, but if you're interested in one thing, come out and hang out with us and spread the word, and trying to get as many people involved in the city and get as many things we can get going for everyone. Our sports leagues just ended, and we had an awesome Winter League party that I think a few of you guys were at, celebrating with MVP awards and the championships. And we'll have more of that coming up in the spring if you're interested in basketball, volleyball, or even pickleball maybe, but racquetball for sure. This month has been our highest numbers at the gym so far of the year. So it's really good to see all the citizens coming out and using the Avtech gym. We had breakfast with Santa the other day, which was full with 100 signups and lots of volunteers. It was great. And tonight we're showing Elf at the gym. We don't have a huge show up, but it's pretty cool. And we might do some more of those later on for different holidays. And the last thing that I want to talk about that we just did was the Winter Wonderland skate, where we had over 50 kids come and skate with us and 3 adults for the adult session. But our next skate is kind of geared towards kids and adults, and hopefully we'll get more adults. It's going to be a formal ball for New Year's. We're going to have that on the 30th, so you can get dressed up and skate at the same time. And then the other things we have coming up, we have a luminary walk at Two Lakes on Thursday, and luckily we'll be able to get some lights from what was supposed to be the ski luminary event last night. That had to get canceled, so we'll kind of help them out with that. Hopefully get some people that were planning on going to that coming to our event. We have the Santa Run on Saturday. That'll be from 12 to 3, and all proceeds will go to hospice. And we'll run from the Branson Pavilion to the Gateway Hotel, and then we'll have some raffles and things at the Gateway afterwards. And then things we do every month, we have a puzzle battle. It's been at the Gateway, first Friday every month. And Kids Night, which is really popular, both of those, that's the first Saturday of every month. So if you're looking for some time to get away from your kids, go out on a date. We'll take them from 5 to 7:30 on the first Saturday of every month. And we always do 2 skate nights. Every other Saturday we do skate nights. They're always themed. They're very popular. And on Saturdays we always do Park and Bark, which is people can bring their dogs and play at Two Lakes, and we get about 10 dogs every time, so that's been really nice to see. But yeah, that's what we got going on at Sports and Rec. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you. It's all good. Mr. Clerk.
Bruce Jaffa.
Bruce Jaffa, outside city limits, mayor, council, manager. First of all, I think we just had a demonstration of what we're losing when we lost the newspaper. Trying to get public information out is going to be a challenge. I think it's going to be something that hopefully the city government can really concentrate on. But not supporting certain businesses has its toll. We just lost Nikki Hughes' business as well, not for the same reason. What I came to you tonight about is I believe Seward can and should own its utility. At the last council meeting, I was called out as an opponent of the sale. True. During my career in construction, I've been the target of comments written on the outhouse wall. So what? I can take it. And so can the majority of the Seward residents that voted against the sale. I asked my own questions anyway. I learned of the benefits to Seward owners and ratepayers. These included local control of rates policy, protection from outside politics, local generators, local jobs. Additionally, of the pride and confidence that a twice-selected All-American city has when it does own and operate its own utility. Council chose to ignore the efforts of local citizens who showed that our locally owned utility is viable. Consequently, to learn more, I contacted the Hillsdale, Michigan utility director. Hillsdale is the home of the prestigious Hillsdale College and is no lightweight in city form. Like Seward, Hillsdale owns its own utility. It buys power, has ratepayers inside and outside the city limits. Their electrical administration includes 5-position advisory board, selected to a 5-year term, overlapping terms. They have in the past had the same concerns for a sale and determined to keep ownership. As a strong conservative community, I believe they have set a good and reasoned example. Inconsistency in administration and poorly considered reduction of rates during the last decade and the new debt obligation of the transmission line upgrade has exacerbated our problem. For Seward, a rate increase is clearly needed and overdue. Make it 3 cents per the local input or 6 cents per the rate study as you choose. And look at the results as they develop. Local control means local adjustment. If it's too high and you're hurting business and they come and scream and let you know that you're hurting them badly, you can drop it. If there's not that damage and you're actually reducing a debt, you can keep it. For the long term, Seward can and should decide to operate the utility for the benefit of the community, even as current requirements may be difficult to accept. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Mr. Clerk.
Tim McDonald.
Tim McDonald, Inside City Limits. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council, Mayor. Again, last week, for a couple days only, we had the road crew blocking off the bridges and running us back and forth with pilot cars. And it wasn't 2 owners, it was only a few minutes. But I was thinking, you know, what if we didn't have these bridges? You know, we only have 1 set of bridges going in and out of this town. And then I thought, well, it's happened before. We were cut off for 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was, somebody correct me, historian, but quite a long time after the '64 earthquake. We didn't have, these bridges were out, the bridges at mile 18 are out, and you know, they had footpaths going back and forth, but as far as vehicular traffic, it was cut off for some time. And after that, they, I don't know if they had the Second Lake Trail, but the Second Lake Trail continued, and then over Dairy Hill, that it's a trail now, but originally it was a road. It was an emergency escape road to get us up from ground level. It goes over Dairy Hill and then hooks up to the road there, and you know, goes straight up to Jess Lee. And my thinking was, you know, I mean, behind Jess Lee, the subdivisions are still being developed. You know, there's going to be 2 or 3 or 4 more there, I think, before they're done. I don't know where we're at now, but technically, you know, a road could be continued there, and then you hook up with the dump road. Now, I'm not suggesting that we put a highway through from, you know, First Avenue, which is where that trail starts, all the way through, but what I am looking at, because just for the safety of the citizens, I mean, at the very least, at the dump road, probably going down and cutting into the east of the waste facility out there and then hooking back up with Herman Lear Road, i.e. exit Glacier Road to the highway there, at least you would have a way around those 3 bridges and you would have a second road access into Seward in an emergencies, and maybe go with a different type of bridge instead of the pile driving bridges that we have on the 3 bridges. They hold it steady and the earthquakes can actually crack them. You might go with a cement monolith that was setting on footings, which could actually move a little bit and settle, and at least you have an escape route there on the dump road. And, as far as looking at anything else, it'd be very difficult. There's probably a lot of houses in the way, but it might be something to study and look at that dump road roundabout, so at least you have that for emergency access, because we are on the ring of fire. Anything can happen at any time.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Clerk?
Cindy Eklund.
Good evening. Cindy Eklund, Inside City Limits. I wanted to speak regarding Resolution 2023-120. And I want to thank you for your efforts on this rate study, and want to speak a little bit about who this rate study is going to affect. And, I looked at KPED, Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District, demographics for Seward. It didn't expand. I didn't expand the search out to Bear Creek, but so 25% of our population in Seward is over 60. 20% is of the 65 and plus are in poverty. 47% of the households usually just have a single breadwinner, and 45% of the households are scheduled as one income homes. So when you look at that, that's who you're deciding these rates for. You're deciding the rates for the people of Seward, not for yourselves. And this is just inside the city, and I know that Bear Creek is going to be affected by these rates as well, not the road. So I want you to really consider this 6 cents and possibly go with what the ad hoc committee recommended, the 2 or 3%, and look at it again down the road. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk?
Daryl Schaefermeyer.
Helpers here to get out of the chair. I apologize.
Yeah, I am.
With these helpers. Daryl Schaefermeyer, Inside the City, and I appreciate the opportunity, Mayor, and members of council, to be able to be here today and make a few comments. I wanted to ask a question first, and maybe the administration could answer that some way. But looking on page 167 of your packet, in the memoranda that's in the packet regarding the proposed rate increase, in the certification of funds, or what I would call the fiscal note, it talks about the rate increase, I'm assuming this action, as generating $10,612,704 in 2024. I don't get the math on that at all. I mean, I look at 6 cents times 55 million kilowatt hours, and I come up with $3.3 million as the number that would be generated. So if somebody could help me with that number, I'd appreciate it. And then secondly, I notice in the fiscal notes where you've got several items. You got an item on this agenda. You've had them every meeting where you're purchasing components for the upgrades and things to the infrastructure, but the notes don't give you any numbers as to what's in the balance of the budget for this project. It gives you the account number, which I assume is from the fund balance in the electric fund or in the funds that were generated by the bonds. But nowhere does it give what's left, how much is expended and what the balance truly is. And as council members, I would hope that you would ask those questions, because I don't know where you're getting the information otherwise. And so I just add that in my comments tonight. I would hope that, a number of us spoke at the last meeting or previous meetings about what we recommended and saw as an appropriate rate adjustment. We're not saying that a rate adjustment's not appropriate or necessary, but we're simply saying that 6 cents is too much. That you've got to think of your constituencies, you've got to think of your businesses. Can they absorb that? Maybe a business can, but I can tell you, as a person on fixed income, it's going to hit them hard, and who have very little to work with each month in their money. So I would hope that you could see fit to go with something less than that. I think we recommended between 2 and 3 cents. I, for one, think 2 cents is an appropriate number to go with. Secondly, you need to have a budget. What's the budget this is based upon? If you went to the Regulatory Commission, they wouldn't even entertain your rate increase without a budget showing how you need it, where it's going to be necessary. We haven't seen any of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. Mr. Clerk.
Phil Kaluza.
Phil Kaluza, Inside City Limits. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for letting me speak. I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said, so I'll try to keep my comments short. And again, I just want to emphasize the rate study included 3 new administrative positions, and the ad hoc committee had no real justification for those positions. I hope you can do better, because when we looked at small utilities, when we're looking at wages, there were no other small utilities that had those kind of administrative positions. I looked at Nome because I'm very familiar with Nome. I spent 6 years on the utility board there and 6 years on the council. So, and Nome is a municipally owned utility, just like Seward. They do their own generation. They have a wind farm to deal with, and they don't have these positions. They don't have a marketing position that their ratepayers have to pay for. And I look at the viability of Seward's utility, $20 million over the last 10 years of providing money to the city to operate, our services is a pretty good deal. We've been milking that cow pretty well. Maybe a little too hard without the feed and care that it needed, but we're certainly not in trouble. And again, I always look at who gets hurt from unnecessary rate increases, and it really is the low-income folks. Those people that we called essential workers just a few years ago, they're the ones in the wintertime that have the hardest time getting through a winter, paying their heating bill as well as their electric. Fixed income seniors, small, and pretty much all businesses trying to operate in this town year-round. I guess I'm just glad to say that I don't have to face the ratepayers come February when they see that first electric bill increase, because it's going to hurt. I believe a 2-cent rate increase for now is reasonable. You have the opportunity to change whenever you feel like it. We're not stuck with a rate forever, and so we can always address it again later on as we see fit. So again, I support the 2-cent rate increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Rhonda Hubbard.
Good evening. Rhonda Hubbard. I live inside city limits. I would like to comment on Resolution 23-120 on the proposed rate increase per financial engineering company's rate study. I am still a little perturbed that we haven't considered or gave better consideration to our native indigenous/traditional knowledge that came through in the ad hoc committee. I don't believe that a 6-cent rate increase is necessary, and when you, the whole argument is that we need to meet the cost of operations and obligations, right, of the utility enterprise fund, but I think we need to weigh that against an allocation of costs within the utility budget and the city commitments. Previous councils, I think some of you have been on there, approved huge capital improvement projects. We've improved our utility to the capacity, I think we get light sewer 3 times now. We have a $10 million bond that we're obligated to, and it just seems a little unfair to leverage that only against the current ratepayers. I think the city needs to go back to the drawing board on their budget. Finance director, administration needs to really take a harder look at this and not be leveraging this all against the ratepayers themselves. It's just too much. You're asking too much of our people. And it just gets tougher. Remember, we have to pay for fuel too, and we don't have natural gas. So I will echo that I think a 2-cent rate increase is good for now, but we really need to review this. And like it was said before, the Regulatory Commission, if we had to abide by their standards, they would not approve such. And I think there's a lot of different ways that we can review the budget for the utility to where that it would not necessitate a 6-cent per kilowatt rate increase at this time. So that I will, I'll end my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Brad Snowden.
Take a second here. And there we go. That's so we look in the future. Thank you very much. Okay. Brad Snowden, I live in the city limits. More specific than that? No. Good enough, okay. First of all, I want to say thank you, council, for putting up with me for the last year. They're going to get me the coming year as city manager. We're all going to grow together as our town is, and we all love our town. I know we do. I can't believe anybody loves it more than me, but I'm sure we all love it equally. And we're all different. And you know what? Difference is good. That being said, look forward to some differences in the coming year. I have some plans, and I hope they're good for Seward. I think they're going to be good for Seward. And I'm sure you're going to be here to help make sure that they're good for Seward. And with that, as I look into my crystal ball and look to the future, it's bright. We've got a great future in Seward. It's going to be good for our kids, too. And you're going to help me be that? And with that, I think I'm just going to close and say, being a man of few words, I love you folks, and I love our town, and I look forward to next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. And Mr. Clerk, was that all that signed?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's everybody who'd signed in. Does anyone else wish to have their 3 minutes? Just if you raise your hand, I'll call on you. And I should ask, can you see if there's anyone in the hallway? Because I think the seats are all full, so I don't want to short anybody. We're all good? Okay, and, yeah, come on in.
Becky Dunn, Inside the City. I wasn't going to speak, but I was in my car and heard on the radio two people speaking that I encouraged to come and speak, so I thought I'd better get my butt down here. I am going to echo to thank you all for being up there, and to point out that it's been a tough year for businesses and for people with this, all the road work has cut into people's businesses, especially those outside the city, especially I was the only one that didn't have a flagger. That was lovely. But 6 cents is just too much. The Electrical Ad Hoc Committee, I kind of feel bad they never did get a chance to do their presentation. They were using numbers that you guys gave them, or the City of Seward gave them, and Rob Montgomery gave them, and they came up with a rate of less than half the 6 cents for the projected, and these are projected increases too. So I am asking you to just stick with the 2 cents, and hopefully, and then see what happens on that, especially through the winter. And now I'm moving, that was from me, now this is from the radio. I am hoping that the increase in Parks and Rec interest in the gym and the activities have been because I've been doing a morning report and running through all the activities, really pushing the Bark and Park and all the other activities you just mentioned. So hopefully, I'd like to think that maybe that was part of an increase of it, running through the city calendar, agenda, and things like that, just happenings, because we don't have a newspaper now. So kind of trying to pick up some of the pace and pop on there once in a while. Did a shout out to the Seward Seahawks this morning. We had a great run for the wrestling team. They went to state and took first. They kicked back they really took first. So anyway, things like that. So if anybody has anything to say, go ahead and give a shout. But I also want to point out that we're not sponsored by anybody really, especially the city. City doesn't support us or pay us anything. So I'd like to thank you all for being up there, but remember that when you call me and complain. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vic. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this point? Last chance. Okay, I'll close this portion, and this brings us to the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. I need a motion and a second to approve, please.
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda and consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. This is where we can make changes, and I have one right off the top. Resolution 2023-135, which was the acquiring the property at Monroe Street. I want to delete that from the agenda because that is being taken back by the owners, I believe. And are there other changes? Councilmember Wells.
Yes, I'd like to pull Resolution 2023-139 from the consent agenda.
Okay. Any other changes? Councilmember Calhoun.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull Resolution 2023-134 from the consent agenda.
Okay. Any other changes? Other changes? Okay. Seeing none, I guess we're ready to vote on this. Mr. Quick?
Okay, voting on the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda minus resolutions 135, which was deleted, and then 134 and 139 were pulled. Okay, Osenga?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
Kreitz?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Okay, your agenda and consent agenda have been approved, and approved on tonight's consent agenda were the November 27th, 2023 City Council regular meeting minutes, Resolution 2023-136, authorizing the city manager to purchase from Bellier Company Electrical Power Systems a 1200 amp Mitsubishi SF6 circuit breaker in a not-to-exceed amount of $95,000 for installation in the Lawing substation near Moose Pass. Resolution 2023-138, authorizing the city manager to pay Chugach Electrics Association for transmission right-of-way clearing between CEA's Dave Creek Substation near Cooper Landing and Seward's Lawing Substation near Moose Pass in the not-to-exceed amount of $423,550. Resolution 2023-140, authorizing professional design services from CRW Engineering Group, Inc. in the amount of $63,365 for design and engineering services to complete construction of the SMIC hypochlorite generator project. And Resolution 2023-141, authorizing the city manager to award a contract for entry rug services to Snow White Cleaners for City Hall, Annex Public Works, and the library.
Thank you. That brings us to proclamations and awards, and I have a proclamation. We've got some members of the swim team here. If you folks and if your coach is here, come on up and you can sort of stand up here so everybody can see your pretty faces. And then I'll be behind you and I'll read the proclamation, okay? Oh, you're going to be over there? It'd be better over here because then the camera will catch you better, okay? Not that you haven't been seen in newspapers and all over the place, but hey, you know, it's a thing. Okay, so here's the proclamation. Where you can watch them, I'm just going to talk behind you, okay? Whereas the Seward High School Seahawks swim team traveled to Soldotna High School for their 2023 Regional 3 Swim and Dive Championships, and whereas the Seward boys placed second in the 200-yard medley relay finals with participants of Ben Ambrosiani, Nick Ambrosiani, Ivor Gates, and Oliver Troba. And whereas Ben Ambrosiani placed first in the boys' 50-yard freestyle, and whereas Esme Wilder placed second in the girls' 100-yard butterfly and third in the girls' 100 breaststroke, and whereas Aubrey Wilder placed third in the girls' 100-yard freestyle, and whereas Nicholas Ambrosiani placed first in the boys' 100-yard freestyle and in the boys' 100-yard backstroke, and whereas these swimmers competed at the Region Swim and Dive Championship, results shown above that have placed them with a spot in the 2023 State Swim and Dive Championship that was held in Juneau, November 10th and 11th, 2023, where they placed 6th in team rankings. And whereas Ben Ambrosiani won the state championship for the 50-yard freestyle, and whereas Nick Ambrosiani placed second in the 100-yard backstroke and in the 100-yard freestyle, and whereas Ben Ambrosiani, Nick Ambrosiani, Ivor Gates, and Oliver Troba placed fourth in the 4x100-yard relay, and whereas this would not have been possible without the guidance of their coach Solomon D'Amico, who teaches the athletes core principles of improving athletic performance, and who allowed the athletes to take the reins of their journey so they could own their outcomes. Now, therefore, I, Sue McClure, Mayor of the City of Seward, Alaska, do hereby congratulate the Seward High School Seahawks swim team and congratulate them on their wins at region and state tournaments, dated this 18th of December, 2023, City of Seward, Alaska. And congratulations. Congrats. Do any of you want to say anything to the people?
They're good, right?
You don't have to. No?
Can I say something?
Oh, sure.
Can I stand? or-
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
cool. These coaches have been extraordinary. One of the things that happens is when the Seward team goes to state, there's no divisions. They compete against every high school in the state. So our school with what, 150 kids? 120 is competing against schools with 1,500 kids, several schools. And these kids are coming in first and second and beating these big teams because of these coaches and because of the hard work of the whole team. So the whole swim program that we have here in Seward deserves the recognition from bringing these kids up through whenever they jump in the water, when they're about 6, 7 years old, until they're graduating high school. So I think Seward has something really cool to offer here with the Tsunami Swim program that we've had.
Oh, yeah.
So, thanks for the recognition.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to the city manager report, which is, you can find beginning on page 6, and I'll turn it over to Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking at the city manager's report on page 6, there's 2 things I want to highlight right off the gate. The first is that the library is back open to full winter hours from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And next week, those hours will be extended from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we've been able to get some staffing back in there, and with the help of some volunteers from the Seward Community Library Association, we're able to expand those hours. I would also like to give a big shout out to the Public Works crew who has been up and running at 4 a.m. most mornings the past few days just to make sure that our roads are safe and navigable. So a big shout out to Doug and his team, especially on Saturday. They worked really hard to make sure the roads were good to go for all the Christmas festivities we had around town, from the Breakfast with Santa to the Legion and beyond. I'd like to note on the Central Treasury report that was put in as a laydown today, we have the negative fund balance for the harbor projects, specifically the CPV, KBP. Those funds, a portion of those came in today, so the next Central Treasury report, that should be clear, and the rest of those as well. And looking forward, we'll have the mid-cycle budget on the January 29th meeting, the second meeting of that time period. So that will be coming to you soon as we finish up work on that. And I mentioned in the city manager report, but my New Year's resolution is to freshen up and update the CMR to be a little bit more consistent and engaging each time it comes out. So I'd like to invite both the citizens and council to send me any thoughts or notes on what you appreciate and what you like when you look at that the city manager report. So please send those comments my way.
Okay, and Mr. Bickling, do you have anything to add? You can get yours in there, and then I'll get questions for both of you.
Okay, yeah, we did attend AML the week before last, and so I'll include kind of more of a comprehensive report, because I thought some of the sessions that we attended were really, really good, which I attended with some of you guys, and so I'll kind of, and I can speak to those at that report at that time.
Okay. So are there questions, comments from council for either of these? Really? Well, I'm excited that the library is back up and running, and that takes care of a lot of the phone calls I've been getting, so.
We're excited too.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, no more comments? All right, we'll move on to the city clerk report, and we actually have a report in the packet on page 15, and Mr. Clerk, what you want to say about it?
Well, Jody and I attended the Alaska Clerks Conference in Anchorage that was running at the same time as the AML conference, and it was just a really great experience to meet all the other clerks from around Alaska, and of course all the educational sessions were right up our alley, so it was great, and we'll see a lot of those clerks next year in Tacoma at the professional development training.
Okay, all right, thank you. And city attorney report, we have one on page 16, and we have an attorney sitting right here. Sam, what do you want to say?
We have an attorney, right?
There's one right there.
Thank you. I also attended briefly the clerk's portion because it had an election security issue and invited attorneys to go attend in the clerk's part of the AML, but it's way more fun. That's a vibrant room ball. So
there you go.
If anybody goes, go to the clerk's room. I normally present on these a little earlier in the month, and so I have a couple that are already sort of outdated, but with relatively good news. The very top item is we drafted a Kendall Ford had repaired a police vehicle and then sort of allowed it to be essentially vandalized by parking it in a real stupid place with lack of security. And Kendall Ford was remarkable. I waited to write a demand letter for a while because I was waiting for a police report, which APD is terrible on public records. Terrible. But they were remarkable in their prompt response, and they brought Alan the officially labeled Seward Police check. So That was just really remarkable. Mostly, I could have dragged out for a year. They got back to me in 72 hours and said, let's make this right. So I really appreciate that. Another thing on here, I've mentioned this before, personnel is hard to talk about here for a couple of reasons. One, it just generally tends to be a management issue. So it's not really a legislative sort of thing, and that's a fairly clear separation of powers. But I also can't really get into any of them publicly because they're all private issues. But I would say when I look back on November, there's a lot more day-to-day advice on personnel stuff, which is maybe neither here nor there. It's not necessarily indicative of a trend, I don't think, but there's nothing that keeps us really busy and hopping like a couple of personnel issues, because they tend to be, there's people involved and relatively short time frames involved, and keep us busy when they roll in. So I enjoy that kind of work. It's not just me, obviously, in our firm, but we have one attorney in particular who really specializes in personnel and labor issues, and he's really gotten plugged in with the city here and is doing a lot of advising behind the scenes, which is great because it is time sensitive, and if it's just me, I can't always respond as quickly as I'd like to. So that's been good. The other thing that I mentioned in here that's moving along relatively quickly is I've also talked about how I like code enforcement stuff because a lot of times those issues drag on for years and years, and the city can't get somebody to just kind of do what they need to do. And sometimes that's because the person can't afford it, or any number of reasons. But a lot of times we can get involved and really solve something that's been a long-standing issue. The city is very, very good about saying compliance is the goal. It's not to beat people up or try to recoup a lot of money. But we had one particular short-term rental, just operator who's absolutely refused to even engage at all with very polite efforts by the city. We brought a suit, and people still just even refuse to sort of play ball in court, for lack of a better word, despite knowing full well what was going on. They were trying to talk to me and talk to Jason and back channel the whole thing, and the court finally ruled favorably to the city. So for the weekend, I was preparing attorney's fee motion, and that's good news. And it's hopefully short-term rentals are a big deal, and not eager to go to court, but willing to do so, and there was a good result. That's the short version, and the rest is there in writing. Thanks for letting me be here. I don't usually stay, but tonight might be the first time in this year that I stay and try to drive in the morning. It's not icy, but it's just really snowy.
Thank you. Are there questions for the attorney? Okay. Not a chatty bunch tonight. It was good seeing you up there. I was there for the Conference of Mayors, and we had a nice chat it was good to see you out of just sitting there. That's another thing those conferences are good for us. No questions? Okay, well, thank you for that. That brings us to, if I'm not missing anything, presentations. So we have two. The first is Haley Johnston, and she's presenting on Alaska Trails, and you have about 10 minutes for this.
I haven't presented to the Seward City Council before. Should I sit? Should I stand?
If you sit there, then you'll be mic'd, and yeah, if you don't mind.
That's great. Turn around and look at my presentation instead of looking at my notes. I'm Haley Johnston, and I don't know if I need to say if I'm in or out of city limits, but I live in Girdwood. Yeah, thanks for giving me a few minutes of your time tonight. I just wanted to come down and update you all on some trail stuff and seek some feedback, or give you guys some opportunities for potentially providing some feedback in the future. Let's see if I know how to work one of these. Yeah? Any advice on particular buttons? Maybe?
See, we do this to people to make them feel confused.
We can move the slides for you from here, too.
Okay.
That'd be easier.
He took the batteries out.
Yeah.
Oh, it is off. Haha. Great. I work for Alaska Trails. we're a statewide nonprofit. Our mission is building trails for Alaska's people, communities, and economy. We do end up doing a lot of stuff around in South Central and a lot around Anchorage, but we also try to advocate for trails projects around the state, including as far down as Sitka, where that photo's from in the back. We did something called the Trails Investment Strategy way back. We did all the research and compilation in 2019 and then released it in 2020. And basically we divided the road system of much of Alaska into regional chapters, and there was a chapter which was Seward to Anchorage Corridor. Within that chapter, there were 3 break project categories, including the Iditarod National Historic Trail, the southern trek of that, so that's basically from Turnagain Pass down here to Seward. The Glacier Discovery Trail and Hut-to-Hut system, which is up near Spencer Glacier in Chugach National Forest, and then some Chugach State Park connectors. So there were 12 specific projects within these categories, and 2/3 of those projects since that time have either been funded or rolled into another project and don't need funding. So with that in mind, we're kind of revamping this trails investment strategy. And the whole reason it's useful is that we're one of the only organizations that's advocating for funding for trails and recreation across the state, and so this is kind of our roadmap for how we do that. So my goal in my job is to make sure that we accurately represent different communities' interests in this, and to that end, we're revising it. And so we're looking at what projects to recommend for the entire state, but specific to you all, we're trying to figure out what projects, if any, we should recommend for the Seward area. So the way that we kind of prioritize projects are we look at community priorities, things that could have a positive economic impact. There's a lot of great data that shows that trails and outdoor recreation are economically good for small towns, as I'm sure you all know. When I come down here to ride my bike on Lost Lake, I stay in a hotel one night sometimes, and I buy a couple meals, and that trickles down to small businesses. And then we're also looking for projects that alleviate or at least do not create additional user conflicts. So some trails across the state, of course, have different types of users that do or do not get along. And so other advice that I'm looking for is what, if any, organizations in the Seward area we should be reaching out to help pull in a project list. So this is one way that you can give me feedback. And I'll leave a paper version of this as well, if that's okay. Is that, yeah, great. But so I've got a QR code up there, and it allows you as city council members and or any of your constituents, if you'd like to share it with them, to provide me direct feedback on trails in the Seward area that you think are prime candidates for investment. So with this all in mind, you may have also heard of Alaska Trails because we're kind of the originator of the Alaska Long Trail idea. And much of that idea came out of the first Trails Investment Strategy. So I wanted to also, while I'm here, not just solicit some trails feedback, but also give you guys a little bit of an update on what's happening with the Alaska Long Trail. If you haven't heard of the Alaska Long Trail, it's a trail system that starts on your front door and goes to Fairbanks, hopefully. So it'll be over 500 miles. It's a variety of different braids for different users in different places. About 20% of it is already in place, and we're working on filling in the gaps in the system. If you haven't heard about why we picked Fairbanks to Seward, it's relatively low construction costs as opposed to other off-the-road system areas. Building near the road system is significantly easier and more cost-effective, and we really want to have an economic impact on communities. So these communities have on and off ramps. Hikers will hopefully be a net economic positive for communities. There's pretty good momentum and landowner support as well. Chugach National Forest, of course, is probably the largest landowner in this southern portion of the Alaska Long Trail, and they've been a great partner so far. And there's great options for multi-use routes and 4 seasons. So back to the Trails Investment Strategy, when we came up with this idea for the Alaska Long Trail, along with some other partners, that helped us kind of figure out what we were going to advocate for with funding. So since that time, there's been a fair amount of private and foundational funding for this project, including some HUTS projects on the Kenai Peninsula, some funding through the Chugach Park Fund, the Rasmussen Foundation, some big grants through Conoco, Matthew Trails and Parks Foundation, and a private race that's done some fundraising as well. So funding's come through that. Big funding has come through Murkowski's office, and a lot of that has gone into your backyard. The southern chuck of the Iditarod in Chugach National Forest, a ton of trail work and bridges has been funded and happened, or has been funded and will happen soon, and that was all through her office with congressionally designated spending. And then there's been over $5.5 million of state projects as well. Unfortunately, much of that has been, well, not unfortunately, but much of that work has been centered in Chugach State Park, so right on Anchorage's back door, and we'd like to see that get spread out a little bit more to smaller communities across the state. So, if you are interested in the Alaska Long Trail, you can learn more in a variety of ways. It has its own page on our website, alaska-trails.org, but there's also this at the bottom, there's a website, and that takes you to our map portal. So, it's an interactive map. What you see pulled up on the screen right there is the Seward portion, so you can click on any of those trails and it'll tell you if it's constructed, if it's proposed, where does it go, what are the uses. So right now, the highlighted purple trail is the Bear Lake portion of the Iditarod National Historic Trail, and so that's a great place to familiarize yourself with what we're saying about the Alaska Long Trail in your backyard, and if you have feedback on that, we would love to hear it. If you feel like anything is incorrect, if you're worried about the alignment, if you think that a potentially different alignment would be better suited or more economically advantageous for your community, that's all stuff that we are excited to hear about. Another thing that's coming soon is we are finally getting some regional working groups together, so you should see some information from us about ways that you can participate in these. Basically, we have an Alaska Long Trail Coalition, which is all the land managers and representatives and ourselves along the whole route, but then these regional working groups are going to be more localized, and they'll allow folks to have a little bit more of a say in the preferred routes, uses if that's up for debate with land managers, and then that's also where we're going to work on some of our long-term solutions for trail maintenance and management. So, next step, if you're interested in the Alaska Long Trail, is you can participate in the Kenai Peninsula Working Group. If you're interested in upcoming construction projects, we have a whole bunch that are happening in the next few years with that state and federal funding. The most pertinent to you all, probably the southern chuck of the Iditarod. There are some big connections happening up in Turnagain Pass. And then the question we get most often is, when can I hike it? And so we still have a few sections that aren't open, but we actually do anticipate some hikers in 2024 who are going to be trying to do the Seward to Eagle River section. There's a couple of road sections that won't be totally connected, but there are many long trails where people have to kind of hop to the next section. So. And then the one other thing that I don't have a slide about, but I want folks to be aware of, is one of the things that we got congressionally designated spending funding for was a feasibility study through the BLM. And so the BLM got $1 million to decide if they think that this trail could be a national scenic trail. They have to answer questions like, is it scenic here? And is it a pleasant trail to hike on? And are there easement issues? And the BLM's never done this before. It's the first time they've ever done it. Typically, the National Park Service does it. I don't know why the BLM why it got directed to them, but it did, and it was an act of Congress that did it, so that is a ball that is rolling, and that is a whole separate thing from what we're doing in terms of like trail development. So as a community and as a landowner, since the city of Seward owns property, you should be reached out to by the BLM to participate in this feasibility study, and that is another great opportunity to provide feedback. Whether you're for, against, have extra thoughts, that's a great place to provide that, and we'll help them decide if they want that to be a national scenic trail or not. And yeah, my contact information is in the bottom right there. It's just my first and last name at alaska-trails.org. And again, I'll leave some information outside, especially with that QR feedback code. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your city council meeting. I know you have a packed agenda, and if anyone has any questions that I can answer, I am all ears.
Okay, thank you very much. I just was going to mention before I ask for questions, the previous mayor has totally planned to hike the long trail once it's Christy Terry. I mean, I'm just wondering if she's one of the ones that's going to do the Seward to.
I hope so. That would be great. I should reach out and yeah.
Questions from council?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
I talked to Steve Cleary the other day, and then Matlova, is that her name?
Mariam,
sorry.
Yeah.
Mariam was here. She presented this spring to us also.
Yeah.
And I the more the better. We need to know about this.
Yeah.
We're working hard on that Iditarod. We had really good work crews with the Trailblazers,
Yeah.
Seward Trailblazers, and Seward Nordic Sea Club.
Yeah.
And we did, well, I worked on the Iditarod yesterday for 3 hours.
Thank you.
But we've had a lot of community support. We had a huge 2 or 3 large days of work crews on Iditarod. There's a lot of work to be done on that trail. But thanks for the attention and giving us, keep us in mind.
Absolutely, and for projects on, like federal land on the actual forest, that's usually one pot of funding. But if you're working on connectivity to that boundary, we every year apply for funds through the capital budget with the state of Alaska. And so if there is a priority project, if there is a dire funding need for something that's outside of that boundary, I would love to chat further with you all about it, because we could potentially submit that this year for capital funding depending what the budget looks like. We submit and then we see what happens, but.
Can I just, one more question, because I've been meaning to ask this and I haven't really got a clear answer on that.
Yeah.
So mile 0 is a start, but there's King's Head State Park out here from Lowell Point out to King's Head.
Yeah.
And that working group with the state park has always wondered if are you guys open to trying to expand that south or add that on as a part within your funding scheme? Because obviously the state park's always needy for money.
Yeah, I think, we get a lot of like, what if we go here? What if we go here? And I think if there is like a community coalescing around an idea and wants to add it on and has like a really clear vision with it, that's totally possible. Like, we're not anti adding on to the overall alignment. We have got a lot of stuff like, it should start in Homer and then go to Seward, and we're like, we don't really have the capacity to do that stretch of it right now, but if Homer wants to work on a trail to Seward, go for it, and we'll be supportive. But I think a small extension like that, like Kane's Head into town, we could definitely be receptive to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did have a question. Do you work at all with Kenai Mountain Turnagain Arm?
Yeah. They've been a funder of some of our work, and they've actually funded, done some small grants that help support the trails investment strategy, because we help, augment trails within their boundary.
Right, because they're pretty active in trails right now. I used to be on the board.
Oh, great.
Evolving that direction, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your.
Yeah, thanks so much. I won't be able to stay for the rest of your meeting, but I will leave some.
You don't want to stick around?
Should I leave them on the desk over here or outside?
Yes. No, right.
Right there?
Or just give them to.
Yeah, you can
give them to.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Our second presentation is by John Warrenchuk on the impacts of trawling, and I believe he is on the phone. Are you on the phone, John? Mr. Clerk?
Madam Mayor, members
yeah.
of the council, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Wow, that worked.
So-
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me join remotely.
You've got something on the screen, and I think the clerk is coordinating here. So you'll have 10 minutes for your presentation when you get started, okay?
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Seward City Council, members of the public. My name is John Warrenchuk. I'm from Juneau, Alaska. I work for a group called Oceana, and we're a conservation organization dedicated to protecting the ocean. I've worked for Oceana, which is a nonprofit conservation group, for the last 20 years. And I'm here today to present to you and give you a little more information around the impacts of trawling, specifically bottom trawling, that's happening offshore of your community. And I apologize for not being there in person. Presenting remotely seems to be the best way to do it this time of year for me. But I have been to Seward a couple times in my career. I went to grad school through the University of Alaska Fairbanks and spent some time at some Alaska Sea Life Center events over the years. But most of my time in my job now is spending time at federal fisheries meetings. And one thing Alaskans might be surprised to learn is that most of our fish in Alaska is caught from people outside Alaska, and most of it is caught by a practice called trawling. Next slide, please. And this is no surprise to you, but, the city of Seward, its maritime economy that's associated with fisheries is mostly based on those traditional Alaska hook and line or salmon fisheries, where fishermen, the traditional sense, are handling individual fish. A lot of tourism, a lot of charter boat fisheries targeting halibut, salmon, lingcod, rockfish. Most of the commercial value in Seward stems from processing, catching sablefish or black cod, halibut, and the salmon fisheries. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, something that is somewhat unrelated to those types of fisheries, but is still a major type of fishing in Alaska is a practice called trawling. And what I want to talk to you today is about the impact of trawling, not trolling, but trawling, on what's called fish habitat, or essential fish habitat. And essential fish habitat is actually a legal term in federal fisheries management parlance for habitat that's needed to grow fish. Next slide, please. And I apologize. Usually these are nice videos that show you the awe and wonder of the seafloor, and these are some videos we collected during an expedition around Kodiak. They're not, they're just static on the PDF, so we'll move forward. Next slide. But the long story is, this stuff that grows up off the seafloor, you can think of it analogous to a forest or a field on land. It's what helps produce fish. This next slide, these little pink dots on the slide, these are baby rockfish or larva rockfish, and some recent studies have found these little tiny rockfish which can live, it takes them 100 years to grow into a big, long-lived old rockfish. They've actually found these rockfish larvae embedded amongst the polyps of these individual corals that grow up from the seafloor. Next slide, please. Now, I'm talking about these things that grow up from the seafloor because this is the kind of structure and habitat that's most impacted from the practice of bottom trawling. I can't really tell what slide we're on, but next slide, you should see a picture of what is a bottom trawl, and that is a net. Usually these are videos that play, but this is a net that's actually pulled along the seafloor by high horsepower boats or high horsepower vessels for many miles. These nets can be a couple hundred feet wide, a couple hundred feet long, and they're dragged along the seafloor in Alaska for several miles to catch what's called ground fish. These are caught by large boats. Factory trawlers actually is the parlance for them. They're based out of Seattle, a couple 100-foot long boats that drag nets targeting pollock, rockfish, flatfish, and along the way they impact the seafloor, impact the habitat. Next slide, please. And so you may have heard about this on the news. If you spend any time on the docks, trawling and the impact of trawling on Alaska's fisheries has been a hot topic in the news. One of the problems with trawling is that, a big net dragged along the seafloor catches a lot of stuff that they don't intend to catch. And one of our primary issues with this is that this is the only kind of fishing in Alaska that changes the structure of the habitat. Again, sorry I don't have the video, but this is comparing a trawled habitat versus an untrawled habitat in the Aleutian Islands of Alaska. And on the right, you would see a lot of structure, deep sea corals and sponges. On the left, you would see a fairly flattened seafloor. Next slide, please. Somehow, under our watch in the last 50 years, trawling has become the primary technique to catch most of the fish in Alaska. Already in the Bering Sea, if you're seeing a table with a set of numbers on it, this is the amount of habitat, the amount of the footprint of this type of fishing. So bottom trawling already impacts over 150,000 square miles, 200,000 plus square kilometers of habitat in the Bering Sea. In the Gulf of Alaska, it's not as prevalent yet, but it's still pretty prevalent, and there's over 15,000 square miles, 30,000 square kilometers of habitat that's impacted every year. Compared to all the other deer types you have, longline, pots, and think of the surface area of those types of deer, they don't impact the bottom as much. Next slide, please. I'm raising this at communities around Alaska, including our own community, because a lot of Alaskans don't quite realize that offshore, the federal fishery managers, this is the National Marine Fisheries Service, and the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, every year authorize these fisheries to occur. There's a lot of science around the impacts of bottom trawling, and we do know that the more bottom trawling you have, the less structure you'll have on the seafloor, the less fish you'll have overall, but that's also a property of large-scale fishing. But there are some tools to deal with that. And that includes not trawling in every sort of place you can, limiting the footprint, protecting certain types of habitats that are really rugged or that are sensitive to trawling, and also changing the gear type. And these are best practices. Next slide, please. And so I spent a lot of my time at fisheries meetings, and many of the stakeholders and people who live in your community do as well, going to fisheries meetings with the Federal Fisheries Service and the North Pacific Council to advocate and to ask this management body to essentially do less trawling. How can you catch the same amount of fish without trawling, without wrecking the habitat, and especially focus on the Gulf of Alaska? This map you're looking at, all the areas in orange, all the way from the Arctic all the way down to Mexico, offshore and inshore, there are hundreds of thousands, millions of square miles that have been put off limits to bottom trawling because of the recognition of the impact of that as a habitat. Unfortunately, here in the Gulf of Alaska, we're falling through the gaps. And the federal fishery managers and our Alaska Department of Fish and Game and our administration in Alaska, largely in the Gulf of Alaska, bottom trawling is still largely open to this kind of fishing. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm on a bit of a delay. This next slide, real quick, another one of the problems with trawling is the indiscriminate nature of the catches. So you may have heard about in the news that while targeting the large volumes of fish that are necessary to keep some of the plants in Kodiak and Dutch Harbor and the offshore factory trawlers from Seattle in business, targeting pollock and arrowtooth flounder and lower value rockfish, to catch a lot of other kinds of fish, important to the communities of Alaska, important to local fisheries, important to charter and sport, and important to personal uses. Consistent fisheries, things like halibut, black cod, salmon, crab, you name it. By law and regulation, the trawlers are not allowed to keep these types of fish because if they were allowed to target those fish, they may outcompete other kinds of fisheries, and so they're forced to discard these fish. It's a wasteful use of fish, and we're trying to limit the footprint and impact of these types of fisheries. Next slide, please. And so, as a minimum measure that the federal fishery managers and the North Pacific Council could do would just be to simply put a cap, put a limit, and freeze the amount of trawling that we have in the Gulf of Alaska today. Let's limit the footprint of trawling we have before it expands offshore of Seward, offshore of Homer, into unexploited habitats, and we start to see these impacts that have become very difficult to fix. And so, real quick, the next 4 or 5 slides just step through a proposal we've sent in front of the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, and I'm making communities aware and wanting them to weigh in on how much trawling, how much habitat you want to see used for trawling offshore of your communities. Maybe just skip ahead to slide number 19. And in the red, these little lines in the red is where current tracks from trawling is occurring. And the outlines in yellow is, say, if the federal fishery managers and members of the council just froze the footprint of trawling, what that would look like offshore. In other words, all the yellow boxes would be open to trawling, all the blue boxes would be closed. Let's just skip ahead all the way to slide number 24, if you don't mind. What we're showing here is a typical nautical chart with the trawl tracks from the commercial trawling vessels, and this is a fleet made up of around 11 factory trawlers out of Seattle and around 60 catcher trawl vessels based in Kodiak and also in, they come up from Oregon, Newport, and Washington. The little thin red lines are areas that we've detected trawl activity. And you notice there's we threw a box around the square of something called Bling Sound off of Seward. And simply taking a freeze the footprint approach to trawling, if you're concerned about habitat offshore and bycatch offshore Seward and interception of salmon and halibut, this is an area that the trawlers have been targeting in years past, and perhaps this is an open trawl area that we want to remove from this proposal if the city of Seward, if the community of Seward did not want to see trawl activity offshore of the community, and perhaps wanted to retain that habitat for use for longline fisheries, local charter, local subsistence, or just growth and feeding of the fish that the community relies on. Again, maybe we'll just back up one slide there. I spend much of my time going to fishery decision meetings, and usually the types of meetings that affect Alaskans, they all occur not necessarily in the communities themselves, but in fishery management meetings in Anchorage or outside of the communities itself. So my presentation here today to the City Council here is to help inform you what's going on in outside waters, in federal control, and also to urge the Council and members of this community to ask the Department of Fish and Game and the Fishery Council to manage trawling better off your shores. I noticed that this council does pass a lot of resolutions, and it's well within your purview and right of your citizens to request that habitat destruction offshore, underwater, that may be beyond your view, but still affects the fish that you rely on, that be better managed. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your public service. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. This is interesting. Questions? Yeah, Councilmember Finch.
I've kind of been following the trawlers this year, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was 15 orca whales killed this year by trawlers in our Gulf of Alaska.
You might not have that.
Yes, thanks for the question. I've been following that issue as well, and there was a large spike in what they call bycatch or orca interactions in the trawl fisheries, and they happened up in the Bering Sea mostly. This is the same types of vessels, the same Seattle-based factory trawlers, but by this time they'd already moved through the Gulf of Alaska and were operating up on the Bering Sea slope and in the Aleutian Islands. And it's kind of a long story, but the federal fishery managers in the last couple of years have really increased the quota for black cod, sablefish, which is a very important type of fish for Seward. I noticed they're like one of the major commercial fishery and processors of black cod or sablefish. But anyhow, the Federal Fisheries Service raised the quota for black cod, which allowed trawlers to start targeting them. So before, there wasn't enough, large enough quota for black cod for anything but bycatch by the trawlers, but now there has been a large enough quota that trawlers started targeting them in the Bering Sea. And as an oily, rich fish, orcas were also targeting this fish, had also been plucking them off the lines of longliners who had switched to pots in the Bering Sea. And but that didn't worry the trawlers, who started fishing for these sablefish and killed 7 orcas in a row in a couple months, in a month and a half in the Bering Sea. Thanks for highlighting it, because it's a bad look for Alaska and our sustainable fisheries, and it was entirely due to a Seattle-based factory trawl fleet bottom trawling for sablefish in the Bering Sea.
Thank you. Anything else? We have a big agenda, so thank you very much for your presentation. We'll be discussing this, I think, soon. Thank you. Okay, I've had requests, so we're going to take a 5-minute break here, and then we'll get back to the regular business. So 8:20, 8:21, something like that, we'll be back.
Okay, and we are ready when you are, Mayor McClure.
Okay, I'll bring council back to order, and it's now 8:21 by that clock. And we are now ready to start the business of the evening. I hope everybody's happy that we passed that thing some years back with only 2 presentations, because it does add on. I mean, they're interesting, but it takes a long time to get to the business, you know. Okay, so, first item is Resolution 2023-134. Mr. Clerk, would you please read that in for the record?
I'm sorry, Mayor McClure, I think we are on ordinance 2023-021.
We'll do ordinances first.
And then we'll get to the resolutions next.
Oh, because they were, I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. Okay. Because they got moved and I've had a week. Okay.
That's good.
We are at public hearings. And we have ordinance 2023-021. Mr. Clerk, would you please read this into the...
Certainly. Ordinance 2023-021. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seward, Alaska, amending Seward City Code 11.15.130, paid parking to establish a procedure for issuance of citations in city parking lots and meter zones to establish a fine.
Okay, thank you. And you can find that on page 91 of the packet. I need a motion to enact and a second, please.
I'll move for the enactment of ordinance 2023-021.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This ordinance would allow the Parks and Recreation Department to enforce parking citations. So I'm going to invite Tyler to come up to speak to that and answer any further questions you may have.
Madam Mayor and Council, thank you guys for allowing me to be here again. Yes, we had a couple conversations over the last month and a half, 2 months regarding parking, and so this was the ordinance that had previously been worked on, and then Jason and I and the city attorney kind of looked it over and made some adjustments. And so this gives us the ability to write citations under city code, and then also for non-payment to use collections as a tool to recoup those payments for violations. So I'll answer any questions you guys have.
First, we have the public hearing, if that's okay. Okay, so anything else from you?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. On ordinance 2023-021. Is there anyone signed in?
Nobody is signed in.
Okay, is there anyone out there that would wish to speak? Okay, well, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Come on back up. And, see, we take 3 weeks off and it's just like, don't know what we're doing anymore. Yes, questions? Councilmember Wells.
My question is, will this parking enforcement also allow our police officers to collect fines and issue fees for people that park on the street during snow times, or is this just for the parking lot?
So they have there's a state statute that has a $25 fine for parking on the side of the road for snow removal or in violation of a posted sign. And so that's already under state statute that the police department has the ability to write. This would just be for Parks and Recreation to write inside the parking lots.
Go ahead.
That's what I figured, but I just wanted you to say it for the public, so I appreciate that. So this is going to be more dedicated towards the harbor parking lots?
Yes, the harbor parking lots.
So I guess this question is going to be for administration, if I may. Last one. If we were to implement a different type of parking regulation system, such as a gate, right, where you pull up, you pay a ticket, which is common across the entire world, you pull in, the gate shuts behind you, you pull out, you scan the ticket, you pay, you're gone. We would still have, until that time happened, if it was to happen, we would have enforcement. But after we had a gated system, then we wouldn't really be using it anymore, right? Because the people would just be paying to sit there if we had a gated system.
There could potentially be the need for enforcement following that stage in case somebody went into the gated system and stayed there. So enforcement by Parks and Rec employees, no matter the system, would be helpful and beneficial since they are the ones managing those parking lots.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Um,
Councilmember,
Some of y'all will remember, but some of the youngsters won't. This just seems to be another Anchorage parking ferry fiasco we're heading into. With the guys driving by just randomly writing tickets. A lot of this looks like what Anchorage dealt with, what they call Anchorage Parking Ferry. They had a group doing the same thing, and it caused a lot of legal battles. People were willing to fight over it. And if I remember right, Anchorage lost a lot of money over that. But that's what this ordinance right here is looking like to me. We're heading down a road of people that would be willing to fight, you know, and it's just gonna tie us up legally.
Councilmember Wells.
Councilmember Finch, would you agree that if we had a either better enforcement system or a gated system, those people who pull in and grab that ticket and park, the gate shuts and they leave the car there for a month, well then, they're gonna get fined, obviously for letting it park there for as long as they did, just like any other system. Do you think that having an ordinance like this would help or not?
Well, I think.
Councilmember.
Oh, I'm sorry. My answer to that, Councilman Wells, I believe we have, what we need is just enforcement, not rewriting. I mean, like the gentleman that said, that was here last time, talked about, you know, he drove through the parking lot, there's so much vehicles parking there that aren't being enforced. Basic enforcement. We don't need to go down the parking for it, but I like the idea of a gate that if they park there for a month, it charges them a daily fee to get out, and they gotta pay that fee.
We had discussed gates at one time and pretty much negated that, so. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would argue that this is just kind of a way of setting up this enforcement. It's a necessary step, I think, to be able to enforce issues that might come up from our parking. I think this is going to, it's just the first step, I would say.
We have discussed it. Any other questions, discussion? We ready to vote? Okay, I think we've got.
If I may, I just wanted to draw your attention to the substitute version of this ordinance.
Oh,
you could make a motion to enact the substitute version.
I'm sorry. This happens.
And
Yeah.
perhaps administration could speak to some of the changes. I believe it was just a matter of the not quite final version went into the packet.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't highlight that. So. Right, so we would need a new motion then to accept the substitute?
A motion to enact the substitute
Enact, I
ordinance.
mean.
Yes.
Okay, so could I have a motion and a second to enact the substitute ordinance 2023-021?
I would like to make a motion to enact the substitute ordinance of 2023-021.
The second?
I'll second.
Okay, administration, could you tell us what's different?
Yeah, we apologize for the inconvenience of this, but there's just a few minor revisions of, on the first page, it's just adding $25 per day, just a clarification there. And on the yellow highlight on the top of page 3, it was just a typo, changing 14 to 11. And then on the last page there, we just put unexcused failure. Obviously, we want to provide opportunities if someone cannot make it, they want to be able to say, oh yeah, I can't make it, can I reschedule or something like that. There's a capitalized and then just a grammatical piece, so there's nothing that changes the language, the intent or the outcomes of this.
Thank you, sorry about that. Any questions about the substitute? So if we're voting, then we're just voting on the substitute and then would enact.
Correct.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on the substitute? I think we are. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Okay, voting on the enactment of the substitute ordinance 2023-021. Kreitz?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Finch?
No.
Osenga?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance has been enacted.
Thank you. hoping this one will go more smoothly. We have a second public hearing. It's Resolution 2023-133. Mr. Clerk, would you please read that when you're ready?
Resolution 2023-133, recognizing the 2024 City of Seward Harbor Tariff and amending Section 100 definitions B, C, adding D, the harbor definition from City Code, and amending Section 230A in the harbor tariff.
Okay, and you'll find this on page 98, and I need a motion to approve and a second, please.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2023-133.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Administration, Mr. Bickling.
Yeah, so this is basically, there's a couple of pieces to this. The first one is just updating the language of the tariff to align with city code, and you'll see that most clearly in the agenda statement. But then you do see it in the language in regards to defining dock and harbor. And then the other piece to this is the actual tariff itself. And so if you look on page 125, we're basically dealing overall of this document is a CPI increase, which gets adopted in every single year so that the rates go up with the CPI. But then there's a couple specific increases that I wanted to make note of. On page 125, there's a 2-cent increase on transient guest annual rates per foot, 2 cents per foot. And there's an increase on the renewal rate. On page 128, there's a dockage rate that has gone up 3 cents. And then the last one, I believe, is on page 140. There's also like a series of wharfage rates that have also just increased slightly. So.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the public hearing on Resolution 2023-133. Mr. Clerk.
Nobody is signed in.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public? Yes, come on up. In this section, you get 5 minutes if you need it.
No.
I didn't say that. Sorry.
Bruce Jaffa, outside city limits. I think bringing this ordinance to your attention is a demonstration of trying to clarify language that sometimes is confusing. This is brought to PACAB. PACAB did look at definitions and tariffs, and of course the tariffs and costs are something that we regularly consider against the costs of similar and competing communities, so that we stay in parity. In most cases, we're slightly behind or we're undercharging. We provide a better service, and I think PACAB feels that tariffs are easily supported by the evidence. But over the last couple of years, where we've looked at definitions, some people have come to PACAB as well as council and been confused about certain things that better clarification and language it removes that obstacle for them.
Thank you, Bruce. Does anyone else wish to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Are there questions for administration or comments? I don't see any. And I don't see a substitute, so I think we're actually ready to vote on this. And see, we did it. Okay.
Okay, voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-133. Calhoun?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Kreitz?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has been approved.
Okay. So now, we're at unfinished business, and that is the one item, Resolution 2023-120. And when you're ready, Mr. Clerk, could you please read that?
Resolution 2023-120, amending the 2024 electric rates tariff to incorporate recommendations from the 2023 rate study to set electric rates at a level to meet the utilities revenue requirements over the next 3 years. This resolution had a public hearing on November 13th, 2023, and was postponed until December 11th, 2023, and that meeting was later rescheduled to tonight.
Okay, thank you, and you'll find this on page 165. And Mike Hubbard, are you on the phone?
I am here.
Oh, good, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Administration, we have some stuff to say.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to first start by saying,
Oh.
asking Mike Hubbard to field the phone, so I'm glad to hear he's here. So we discussed at the 2 meetings prior, the administration's recommendation to follow Mike Hubbard's utility rate analysis and to increase with the 6 cents. In that time, we've been able to break down some of the responses to different items from the ad hoc committees as well, written in that packet. But if you have any further questions for administration or Mike Hubbard, feel free to ask them now.
Okay. And Mr. Bickling, you have nothing else? Okay, so bringing it to council, what you got to ask or say? Councilmember Wells.
Yes. So the big concern, obviously, for a rate increase is to low-income households, I would believe. Why is it that we cannot enact a rate adjustment for those low-income families and at the same time enact the 6 cent rate increase across the board? I know that multiple communities, cities who have privatized utilities, such as HEA, they have those types of programs for low-income households to apply for a lower rate. So why can we not do that?
Is that addressed to administration?
Yes,
or
ma'am, it is.
rhetorical? Okay.
So a first thought would be a quick solution to that would be being able to send out average rates so that each month somebody can anticipate what their rate will be based off of the previous 12 months average, so that there can be a consistent rate knowledge of saying, oh, for the past 12 months my rate has been about 60, so every month we'll send them $60. Further than that, that would be a program that you would want to drive from council to do that. We could look into it and continue forward, but we haven't gone down that pathway yet, but would be excited to if that is a suggestion from council.
Yes, please.
If I could,
Yeah.
if I could also add, it's a zero-sum game in the sense that we have our revenue requirements. If you reduce your revenues from one source, you're going to have to increase the revenues from another source. Mm-hmm. And so if there is a program that is giving somebody a rate decrease or, somewhat of a lower rate, then you have to make up for it from the other ratepayers. Now, it may not be noticeable if there's not that many people getting the lower rate, but I'm just saying that you would have to make up for it some other place.
Councilmember Wells.
A follow-up. Mr. Hubbard, appreciate you being here tonight, and thank you for your comment. I'm sure you've heard throughout the ad hoc committee's presentations and throughout public comment that a lot of the public supports a 2 to 3 cent raise, but does not support a 6%. If we were to only raise 3 cents, then yes, that affects our income from every user group. But if we raise 6 cents across the board and only one user group pays a lower rate, granted we're not meeting our income requirements as projected, but we could be getting as close as 80 to 85% hypothetically. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments? Councilmember Barnwell.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just to kind of retort on some of the comments made earlier by the public. I've gone through this packet fairly heavily the last couple of days, and I think it was very detailed in its breakdown of the budget. I think Mike Hubbard's done an exceptional job of attending to the ad hoc committee's suggestions and actually changed a lot of substantial things in there to accommodate what the ad hoc committee has found. Also, there weren't, the only, Mike Hubbard, actually, one of those changes was they're going to hire, or they suggest hiring an assistant director and another lineman, and then some money for increase for the director's pay. So they're really only adding 2 positions. So I think we need to be careful here when we make these statements that we have to, I think we have to really be careful here. I think, again, Mike Hubbard's report was very detailed on his budget. And some people claim that the numbers given to Mike may have been off. I have a hard time with Carmen Jackson and Sully, our finance director, with Mike Hubbard, with a lot of expertise. I find it really hard to question that level of expertise. Somebody mentioned, and I'm not trying to denigrate the ad hoc committee. I think they've done a wonderful job and they've helped us a lot. But it's really, for me, it's really dangerous territory for the ad hoc committee to suggest 3 cents or 2 cents without really at least directing it to Mike Hubbard's detailed analysis and saying, because I just don't get it. According to Mike Hubbard, a 6 cents increase barely gives us any margin for error, or just a barely acceptable margin. So when we say that we can go to 2 or 3 cents, to me, I think it's irresponsible and somewhat negligent, and it misleads the public. And I'm fearful that people that are doing that are this is a very hard decision for all of us. None of us on this city council want to increase these rates. We all feel deeply for these business people that are hurting like heck every winter, more and more. And for the public, some people that really are going to be in a hardship because of this rates. These are huge increases. I also want to point out that Alaska Power Company, which administers many different communities throughout the state, just had a 25% increase. And some of those increases are like in Southeast Alaska, where they have 80% hydropower. And so we're dealing with a lot of there's a lot of issues here. and I just think the inflation alone at 20% in the last few years, 2 cents doesn't even come close to that. I'm almost done. I just want to say that if you break down that 6 cents, and I'm not saying that I necessarily want 6 cents right now, but if you just break down the 6 cents, 3 cents of that is paying for the bond payment. So just that first 3 cents. Isn't it each $500,000 is a penny? And our bond payments are somewhere in the vicinity of 1.5. So wouldn't that be 3 cents? That's 3 cents right there. Another 2 cents. We need to start giving. We need to get back for an enterprise fund and building back some of our equity for our program. And we have to deal with inflation. And then we also have to deal with the fact that we're looking at $675,000 extra for paying for employees. And this is a bare bones. This isn't a Cadillac. We're not talking about a Cadillac program here. We're talking just getting it up in order. It's like having a car that I drive to Anchorage. I'm not going to drive an old jalopy over there that has a poor battery or a bad tire. We have to do this right. We can't do it halfway. And as far as owning it, I'm not against keeping this. If we make that decision, that's entirely a decision down the line. Right now, we're just talking about what kind of rating increase we need to do. So, I think I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Other comments, questions, anything? Let me give Councilmember Calhoun. No? Oh, okay, Councilmember Finn.
Mr. Hubbard?
Yes.
For the public record, I'd like for people to know that you've completed 82 rate studies for 28 clients at 6 different states for regulated, non-regulated, electric, water, wastewater, and harbor operations. And I just want to thank you for your professionalism and your experience and your knowledge.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank Councilmember Calhoun.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have some thoughts about some of this, on the direction that we're headed, when I'm not sure that we actually have a really clear path on what we want to do with our utility, in a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And I think, what I've tried to get a couple of times is, where are we with our infrastructure project? We voted for a $10 million bond, okay? We're way past that $10 million bond. We approved a project that was going to be, at that time, about $16, $17 million. We're past that. But we still don't really have the plan on, before we start setting rates, I think we need to understand, are we going to keep this utility for 8, 10, 12, 30 years? Are we going to work on the utility and get it ready in case we decide in another 2 years to see if it's viable to sell it? And I'm not talking pros and cons of either of those right now. But I just don't really know if we have a clear path. We haven't approved a lot of the stuff that's projected in the rate study, and I'm not discounting anything that Mr. Hubbard has done, and I'm not discounting anything that the ad hoc committee came up with. That conversation isn't what's at stake right here. But we're talking our bond payments, okay? I'll just bring that up. We start making principal bond payments in 2025, okay? Correct me if I'm wrong, and if I am wrong, I'll admit that. But we're paying interest of about $221,000 on that bond, okay? And of course, those payments will decrease as time goes, but it's about $221 million into 2025. And then we start making a principal payment of $150,000 in addition to that. So we're looking at about $380,000. Now, we have another electric bond out there, but if you take both of those bonds combined, it doesn't reach $1 million a year. So I guess I would like some clarification on where that number came from on our bond payment, because I don't see it unless I don't have good information, and that may be true. So that being said, if you look at our 2024 approved budget, we actually were about break even until the $400,000 payment that UBATCH Electric popped up. Okay, so that's going to bump us into the red for 2024, but not by that amount of money. We haven't approved, any kind of management contracts. We haven't approved additional positions. Our 2024 budget shows that we're really not in bad shape. And so my whole thought is, until we get a little tighter plan on it, I would like to, maybe look at a 2 to 3% increase, and then we don't even have our mid-cycle budget report yet. We don't know where we're at. We hear that our sales tax revenues are going to be down, but the information from KPB isn't really showing that. So I just think maybe we could slow a little bit, look at a smaller than 6-cent increase now, if we're going to do an increase. And then once we have all this other information, we can always go again. And I've heard it said that, it's going to make people mad if we raise the rates this time. We might as well take the whole chunk and do it now and only have people mad once. But I think if people understand that we're actually trying to make sure we don't raise rates more than is necessary, they'll be patient if we have to do an increase now, and we maybe have to do another increase in 4 months when we understand all these other issues that are sitting out there, whether we're going to have a director, whether we're going to have a management contract, whether we're going to fill some positions or not fill some. And so my thoughts are, I'm not really going to support a 6-cent increase tonight. That's where I'm at.
Did you want to, Madam
Suli, do you want to respond to the bond?
That's right.
Do you want responses to your questions, Suli?
If it's available, and like I said, if that's not correct information, then let me know. I'm good.
Of course.
What I have in front of me is the schedule for the bond, for the electric bond in 2022. So we start paying the principal due is $150,000 in 2025. Correct. So we are currently paying 2020 $1,975, which the total is 441. 750,000 by the end of the 2025. I'm sorry, 2024. That you add the 2016 refund bond. Which is an annual debt of 339 with 950,000.
Okay.
We are currently paying $228.75 from 2023. So we capitalized at 499,000, which includes the whole FY22 payments, and we ran over already for that. So we started paying now in 23 for 220,875 on the next year in 25, where the total will be the 441.
Right.
Yeah. Plus the 300 something.
Right, but our bond payments aren't coming up to $1.5 million.
If I could interject here.
Yes, Mike.
Let's step back a second here. When you say that the 2024 budget, puts you in a pretty good position and so on and so forth. Well, there's a few things that we have to keep in mind on the 2024 budget. First of all, the revenues are increased by, say, a little over $100,000. Okay? Now, where does that increase come from? If you're not raising rates, then that comes from increased sales, and we don't know if sales are going to increase. I based it on sales that's just been historical. So, we have to kind of keep that in mind. Secondly, the 2024 budget has a depreciation number in there of about $1.5 million. But a number of things that are being financed right now will hit the books in 2025, and so the depreciation itself is going to increase by about $300,000. And the 2024 budget does not have tilt in there. That's $1 million. So, in my analysis, I've included tilt as a revenue requirement. And finally, when we say that the bonds are, X amount for the principal and interest and so on, that's true, but we always strive, we have to maintain a debt service coverage ratio, and usually we can. A debt service coverage ratio means that our net cash flow before debt service has to be at 1.30 or 1.35 of the total debt service. And since depreciation is a non-cash item and PILT is not included, then usually, we can meet that. But we have to, make sure that we do meet that. So, again, what I'm saying, to kind of step back again is that, the budget had this $100,000+ of increased revenues that is somewhat speculative, and then it doesn't have the depreciation increase, it doesn't have the PILT, and it doesn't have a number of other things that are coming up. It was alluded to earlier that another $10 million of bonds are going to be issued in the next couple of years. So there are those things that have to be considered as well.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Vice Mayor, you have, Vice Mayor.
So was it 10, I was just going to try to get some clarification. I thought it was 6 million that we were kind of be looking at again, not.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to clarify because we got a couple of raised eyebrows in here, and I thought it was 6 or 7 million additionally after the 10 that we got originally.
I thought that price went up.
Yeah, I could have misspoke. It's, let's see here, new bonds, it might be like, I think maybe it was 3 million or something. I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay.
About that.
Okay.
That sounds better. Yes.
Just one more question. So, I guess I'd ask Mike Hubbard this. So what would we be affecting if we only adopt a 2 or 3 cent increase on our tariff? What would happen? What are we actually missing out on then? What's the danger in that?
Well, 2 or 3 cents, let's say you went half. Let's say you went 3 cents, and so that you're missing $1.5 million in round numbers. So you're not going to be able to fund your PILT, probably. You will not be able to fund contributions to MERC. So that alone is, that's one, that's $1.5 million or so right there, or 1.3 million or something like that. If you would not, and then, but if you did include the PILT in there, and if you did include the MERC in there, then your margins are going to be, negative. Although, I mean, you may still have a positive cash flow because of depreciation, and MERF is technically that would be amortized over a period of time, or it would be cash flow and not hit the margin itself, the income itself. So, and you would not be able to, your margins are going to be very tight. You would not be able to give the raises. You would not be able to have new positions or anything.
Okay, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. And then you were talking about a bond. Would that possibly affect our status as far as future bond applications?
Very much so. If your margins are negative, but even though you're meeting your debt service coverage ratio, the bond bank may look very judiciously at that, and it could affect the interest rate that you pay.
Thank you.
So Councilmember Barnwell.
Mr. Hubbard, can you address, because there's some concern amongst the public that what we've done as a electric utility in the last few years with our infrastructure is excessive and perhaps irresponsible, or at least excessive. Can you address that? Was it reasonable, the infrastructure that we've accomplished so far? Was it needed? And what would happen if we hadn't done that? Could we have waited 5 or 10 more years and tried to get to that, or was it imperative that we attended this infrastructure in the last few years? From your perspective.
Well, I mean, I didn't do a review of the, the infrastructure, and the condition. I didn't do a conditional survey or anything like that. But however, I will say that if a lot of this stuff had not been done, there probably would have been a forest fire at the north part of the service area. Having seen a picture of a fireball from your transmission line. So the clearing definitely had to have been done, and the upgrade of the line definitely had to have been done.
Thank you. Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think any of us are really questioning whether we needed to do the infrastructure project or not, or what that, the requirement for that for the health of the utility. My question is, do we need to do all of this in one chunk when some of the things, and again, I'm not discounting Mr. Hubbard's knowledge and expertise. He's got much more than I do. As do other people in the community when it comes to things like this. I personally would feel better if we maybe just, sequenced it a little bit. If we do an increase, get it set, but then start to really look and see what our budget really is. Because some of the things that we're talking about are sort of speculative, and we don't really have the answers that are that solid on, what's our revenue? Are we going to sell more power? Are we not going to sell more power? And I just think that maybe for, the health of, the mental health of some of the people in our community maybe, and that's maybe not a good terminology, but let people feel a little easier that we're really trying to get it dialed in as much as we can before we just take that big jump. And, what's the effect if we do 2 to 3% now, and then we realize, okay, now we need to do another increase in our 25-26 budget, or maybe sooner when we find out some of these other answers that we don't have right now. And I think people would understand that if they think that we're really trying to be judicious about the money that they're going to pay, and give us some time to get the real solid answers that we need to have.
Vice Mayor Lusanga.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I can appreciate what Councilmember Calhoun is saying. My only worry is we cut it in half now. We have things build up 3 years or 2 years from now. We have to do it again. Instead of a 3-cent raise, we have to do a 6-cent raise, or something to that effect. I'm just saying it's just pushing the can down the road. We need to do what we need. Well, I feel like we need to do what we need to do, which is, if it's been recommended and argued for by a professional, and as far as I know, administration is kind of saying, yes, do a 6-cent increase, then I don't know, I just would feel kind of odd going against recommendations of professionals at this point.
Okay, other Councilmember Finn.
I understand what Councilmember Singh is saying, but what if we did 3% now and 6 months later look at another 3% to ease into this? Is that feasible?
Are you asking?
Anybody. Would that be a feasible?
Well, we would need to ask administration.
It is.
Or Mr. Hubbard.
It is up to the will of the council what they'd like to do. If we want to revisit again in 6 months, we can do that.
It would take, Well, Councilmember Barlow.
I just want to clarify, it's not 3% or 3% is 3 cents.
3 cents,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
So
cents.
there's a big difference there.
Right.
Yes, there is.
And
Sorry about that, 3
well,
cents.
I'm kind of with Mr. Osenga
Yeah.
here in the
Oh.
sense, sorry.
If I could,
Go ahead.
it seems to me that if 3 cents is in there now, and then we will look at it in 6 months, then, like somebody else said, that's kicking the can down the road. And I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I would suggest that you have strong language in there that in 6 months you will do it. And you can always not do it later. You can always change it later. But I would have strong language in there that says that it will be 3 cents in 6 months unless it's changed or something like that.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah,
Councilmember Barlow.
because if 6 months, if you did 3 cents now, basically, $1 million is basically 2 cents a year. So 6 months at 3 cents, we're going to lose somewhere in the order of, I don't know, what is that, $300,000 or something? I mean, do we have that cushion in our budget to just play with it and go, you know what, we're not going to do this, we're just going to wait, and hopefully that we have enough money in the account to cushion that $300,000. To me, it's just playing a little bit, it's kicking the can down the road. And I think we just have to own up to the fact that we haven't done enough infrastructure and that we're in a pickle here, and we need to attend to this, in my opinion. Maybe not all 6, but certainly closer to 6 than the 3.
Well, okay.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Can I? Okay.
Councilmember
So let's
Kalman.
find out. So I'm going to make a motion that we amend this to be a 3 cent increase.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for
Can I
3 cents.
say
And
something real quick?
Councilmember Finch, you did have your...
My thinking of the 6 months is the low income, the elderly, right now winter's tight. Come summertime, they know it's gonna be coming. Halfway through summer, they can hopefully save up a little more money as they roll into possibly that, instead of 6 cents right off the bat. I do know it hurt, $36 a month hurts a lot of people. And if we just think of it that way, of giving them the opportunity to roll into it, it might be a little easier. That was my thought.
Okay, we're discussing the motion now of 3 cents. Councilmember
Sorry, I'm
Barlow.
just going to, in 2021, the rate study suggested an increase. We didn't increase it then. We did not dump money into infrastructure at that time, and we are further down the road now than if we had made that hard decision then, would have been much easier now. So I fear that we are doing something similar to 2021.
Right. I will interject that the reason the rates weren't increased during COVID was to help out because of COVID. So it was, I think, well-intentioned, but maybe not thought through at the time when council did that, so interjection. Councilmember Wells.
I know that we are discussing the motion, but if I could ask Mr. Hubbard a question. Mr. Hubbard, are you there?
Yes, I am.
It was brought up during citizens' comments that this size of a rate increase would never be allowed if we were a federally regulated utility. Can you speak to that?
Sure. I've worked with regulated and unregulated, and here in Maine, there's somewhat, the consumer-owned utilities are quasi-regulated. And if the costs are justifiable, then they would certainly be allowed. Here in Maine, Central Maine Power is going through a huge rate increase, and I don't know what the percentage is, but I know that the customer charge went from $16 and some odd cents to $20-some. And the energy portion, it was going up quite a bit as well. If the costs are justified, then yes, there's no reason that the commission would not allow them. Now, having said that, I will say that the beauty of a consumer-owned utility in rate making in Alaska that's not regulated, say Homer is regulated and Chugach is regulated, but Seward is not regulated, Nome is not regulated, Naknek Electric is not regulated, Dutch Harbor, and so on and so forth. The beauty of your rate making is that you get to look forward. You get to look and you can base your rate on what you expect expenses to be at the time those rates are going to be in effect. Whereas with a regulated utility, they are basing it on historical numbers, and they can only change it for known and measurable changes. Therefore, if you know that your labor costs are going to increase at the beginning of the year, but you don't know by how much, then you don't get to put that labor increase into your rates. And so therefore, a regulated utility is always kind of trying to catch up. And so, and that's why they have, to some extent, that's why they have higher margins, higher tiers, and so on. And with you get to base it on what you think, and that it's not that we just threw darts at this. I mean, we look at these numbers, and we are not adding anything. We looked at these, and we felt that this was a reasonable amount to put in there, and that's what it was based on. So, I guess in answer to the question is, it's a different process, and if we were if we were regulated, we would have had been basing a lot more on historical. But just because it's a large increase does not mean that a regulated or a regulatory commission would not disallow it. Everybody is going up right now. All the utilities are going up by large amounts. I'm working on 2 right now here in Maine that are going up by, one is going up by 15%. And with the other one, we haven't come up with a number yet, but it's going to be 15 or more percent. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're discussing now 3-cent increase with no time limit, right? It was just basically 3 cents increase. That was the motion, so. Any other comments? Okay, Mr. Clerk, I guess we're ready to vote on that, increasing by 3 cents.
Voting on the motion to amend the resolution to increase by 3 cents. Osenga?
No.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Barnwell?
No.
Kreitz?
No.
Wells?
No.
And Mayor McClure?
No.
Okay, that motion has failed, and the main motion is back on the floor.
Further discussion? I waited too long. Councilmember Wells.
I'm more than happy to let you speak, Mayor.
No, that's okay. I give time.
I hope that the community recognizes the fact that these discussions were started over a year ago, hence the reason why we were discussing selling the utility. This isn't something new. These expense increases aren't something that is just showing up today. These expenses and these rate increases have been talked about at multiple council meetings for the last, since I got on council 2 years ago. And so I'm not sure why it seems like such a big surprise. One of the reasons why I was so for selling the utility was to try and avoid such a large rate increase like this. But if we're going to maintain the utility as like the voters have requested, I had one voter tell me today that we don't need a Cadillac utility, that we can get by with a beater with a heater. Literally, that's a quoted text message. And I'm sorry, but I don't believe that any citizen in this community wants our utility to be a beater with a heater. And as things have been brought up in the already by Councilmember Barnwell, these rate increases have been coming for a long time, and they have just been kicked down the road for one reason or the other. And the infrastructure repairs had been needed for who knows how long, until Mr. Montgomery got in and started putting it to work. So these aren't new issues, and these are some of the main issues why the council suggested and pushed so hard to sell this utility. And it's extremely unfortunate. I, however, will support a 6 cents increase, but I would also request that administration work on a relief process for low-income families that sets the payment on an income basis, which is not uncommon nationwide. And I believe that, yes, as Mr. Hubbard has stated, that will still cut into our overall needed forecasted income, but it's not going to cut into it as much as only raising it by 3%. And we will be directly, 3 cents, sorry, 3 cents. And we will be directly addressing those that can't afford that rate increase. And so I would like to make a motion to maintain the 6 cent rate increase and to have administration work to create a income reduction for low-income households.
You mean
A rate reduction.
rate reduction.
A rate reduction for low-income households.
Is there a second? Second? Okay, Councilmember Kreitz. Okay. So, Councilmember.
Do we have to talk about this? Do we have to?
Do we have
Do we have to?
Yes.
It has to be.
Directed
My motion,
to
yes,
this
yeah.
motion, right? Did you want to? No, okay.
Understood.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is similar to the original resolution, but it's adding in the income-based
Deduction for low-income families and low-income households.
which changes it enough that we need to. If we vote, this is just this is an amendment though, right? Because of that added language?
That would be an amendment.
So if we pass this, we still have to vote on the entirety. Okay, just to clarify.
It could just be a directive.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, just, I'm looking at the lawyer.
We have our attorney here, hey.
Let's use that.
That might simplify it.
Right, I mean, I'm just thinking through it in real time
Yeah,
like
sorry.
everybody else too, but it seems like if one is adding language to the resolution, essentially they're making it contingent on some unknown research project. Another would be, which, I mean, not disparaging the notion of it, but the other would be to just deal with the resolution as it sits and then do a directive to sort of explore that. Might just make the whole thing administratively a whole heck of a lot cleaner.
Okay, thank you. Would the maker of the motion agree to that?
Yes, I would like to remove my motion.
Okay, and the second agrees. So now we have the original resolution back on the board, and Councilmember Barnwell.
I was just, so I can.
You can just
So
talk
we can get in
about
the
anything now.
One thing we could do, we are going to make a little bit more money, hopefully, on parking this year. I think in the $500,000 range. And Hopefully, we can, I'm saying that if we took $500,000, that right there is that's a penny. We could go 5 cents. Then, as Mr. Calhoun suggested, look at our budget. But it's still kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, it would take a motion if you wanted to make it.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's talk about it right now.
Vice Mayor, no?
I think 6 cents is needed, but I do agree that the low income and the effect that that's going to have on people with fixed income is my major thing with it. So I like the directive. I like the idea of implementing that. I think that's where that's going to hurt the most for those people. So
Yeah. Councilmember.
I do want to remind people too, though, like, these darn businesses, when you're visiting in the winter when they're barely hanging on, an increase of what we're talking about might shutter some of these businesses in the winter, which is only exacerbates our problem in the winter, which is a huge problem for our community. Again, I think to the public, just realize that that we're wrestling with huge things here. None of us want to do that. None of us are saying, let's just do 6 and we're callous people. We're extremely empathetic towards the needs of all of us. We all are human ourselves and are paying bills. It's like we're not flippantly talking about these things. These are big issues that we're trying to wrestle with.
Councilmember Finch.
Like Mr. Barlow was talking about the parking fee, we'll get to that. But for years, the city council has the city's used the electric company as a cash cow instead of basic business of putting your money back into your infrastructure to build.
Yep.
And now we're dealing with the past issues, okay? It does bother me with the seniors and the low income, and the locals that are the backbone of the community year round. That's why I was shaking my head at you about the parking increase. I'm looking at increases anywhere from 100 to 300% on here, and we're gonna have that later. We're gonna have that later. But it's hard for me to agree with the 6 cents because of who I know it's gonna affect.
Okay, are we closer to voting? Was there input over here that we need?
We did want to add that Sully in the Finance Department has been working on budget billing, which can be helpful for this conversation. Sully, did you want to speak to that?
We currently are working with Utility Assist to get the budgeting billing. So what that means is levelize the billing. The dollar amount that change in every bill, what it does is we calculate it and we do an average during the year, and then at the end of the year we throw what either is more or less. And then what this helps is to avoid the large bills during the seasons, months, and rates and all that. So we are currently working to implement that in our system as we speak. So.
And we can implement that on any utility customer who has lived at their residence for the past 12 months, because we can base that off of the 12-month average.
So that's in effect already.
Working towards that, yeah.
Okay. Okay, are we close to voting on this?
I am, but
Councilmember Wells.
I'm sorry. That we're working on for residents, will that also address or assist some of the small businesses? Or is it just for individuals?
That would be up to you.
Oh, is that up to us? Yeah, it would be up to us.
It would be up to us.
Yeah, we could decide to move forward with it for businesses as well. It's any resident any utility customer who's been at their location for at least 12 months.
For 1 year. Okay, does that answer the question?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
One question for
Okay, Councilmember Finch?
With the electric bill being due for whatever reason on the 22nd of the month, has that ever been adjusted to where most people's bills are to like the first of the month? That would help a lot of people that I know are trying to save money to pay their electric bill on the 22nd instead of like all their other bills they pay on the 1st when they get paid. I never understood why it's that way.
It hasn't been adjusted yet. I'm trying to work on that. It's something that the city has been doing for many years, and I will look into that.
Because I've
and
asked
see.
for many years and nobody can explain why people.
It will
low
change your
income and-
receivable.
Huh?
That's for fact that it was never changed because it will change your receivable. That's the main thing. Now, how will be the implemented and what will be the impact for it? I don't have that data yet, but I could work on that for you.
I'm sure it would decrease the manpower monthly sending out notices of being shut off, because I've sat and watched that in there before, and that's all the guys Jeremy was doing, was sending out notices.
Okay, we are discussing the motion, I mean, the resolution though at this point, but I think she'll look into it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
Okay.
Mr. Clerk, we are ready to vote.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-120. Wells,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
Finch,
No.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Calhoun,
No.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has been approved.
Okay. Is anyone needing a break before we continue? I'm not seeing any nods. So, let's continue to new business resolutions. We have Resolution 2023-137, which is rather lengthy to read. Mr. Clerk?
Okay, here goes. Resolution 2023-137, amending Resolution 2022-019, and authorizing the city manager to place and order the purchase one 2024 Ford F-150 Crew Cab Truck Police Responder Package Vehicle from Kendall Ford of Anchorage for the purchase of a command vehicle for the fire department using the state's competitive procurement fleet vehicle contract with associated upfitting and fire-specific equipment from Alaska Safety and Supply in the amount not to exceed $72,859 and appropriating funds.
Okay, and this is on page 259 of the packet. I need a motion to approve and a second, please.
I'll move for the approval of Resolution 2023-137.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. And before we start, yes,
Yeah.
Councilmember Kreis.
So because my husband's the fire chief, I was told I needed to make sure I don't have a conflict of interest on voting for this. So-
Okay, this is a fire truck. Do you anticipate, what was our limit, $5,000 of income increase due to this purchase? Okay, then I'll rule you do not have a conflict on this specific one.
Great.
And,
Madam Mayor,
Mr.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's kind of late here. And
Oh.
yeah, I just assumed, yes, Mr.
Sorry.
Hubbard,
It's
you
like
may, and
1:30 in
thank
the
you
morning
for
then,
being
right?
here.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
Is it like 1:30?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this resolution is coming before you to amend a previous resolution in sorry, I didn't see Chief Kreitz out there. Do you? Okay, I'm going to keep it going then. To amend a previous resolution in 2022-019, and that previously 2 command trucks had been approved by council. One of those command trucks was built and outfitted, but the fire department was notified in November of 2023 that would not be built and outfitted. Instead, Kendall Ford seems positive we can get one in 2024, but there's a small price adjustment that we need to approve tonight, just to make sure that we can get that second police responder super crew set up for our fire department. So this had been previously approved by council, but we needed to amend it slightly because of some supply issues.
Okay. Any questions about that? That sounds pretty thorough. Ready to vote? Okay. Mr. Clerk?
Okay, voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-137. Calhoun,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has been approved.
Okay. So now we have the 2 items that were moved from the consent agenda. And the first of these is, correct correct me if I'm wrong. I'm okay?
134?
Okay. Yes. The first of these is 2023-134. Mr. Clerk?
Resolution 2023-134, adopting the calendar year 2024 City of Seward fee schedule.
Okay, and that's on page 27. I need a motion to approve and a second, please.
So I'll move for the approval of Resolution 2023-134.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration, who wants to talk about this?
I'll take that. So this is our annual kind of approving of our fees for the City of Seward. We do have a number of changes this year and a number of additions, a number of adjustments, and just as we grow and we kind of update a lot of what we're doing in practice, these are the changes for each department. And so I'm happy to talk about any of the changes. I did provide kind of an attachment here that does go through and identifies a lot of the changes, and so I'm happy to answer any questions, or also too, we do have directors here that can help answer questions if kind of some of the explanations were not as helpful as they needed to be.
Okay, was it Councilmember Calhoun, you're the one that removed this?
Yes, Madam Mayor, that's true.
So, do you want to ask first?
Yeah, a couple things that, in the cemetery section was where I had most of my questions to start with. We've raised the burial permit cost quite a bit. One thing that I want to clarify as we get into that discussion a little bit is this pertains to the city cemetery, not to the other privately owned cemeteries.
Correct.
Like the American Legion and the Pioneers of Alaska.
Right.
And those.
Correct. This is only for city cemeteries. Each of the other cemeteries can set their own rates as they choose. Yes.
Okay, and so do we have, since burial permits are required to come from the city clerk's office, are we going to have in place that system where somebody goes to get a burial permit and they tell them that it's from the Pioneers or the American Legion Cemetery? Are they going to then collect, what is their fee? Whatever we tell them the fee is going to be?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's still, the permit is your permit.
Correct.
So do we need to tell you what the fee we would like you to charge is?
Yes, yeah, we can do that. So we're actually going to be moving, we're trying to clean this up because it's been very difficult sometimes for people to come in because they go to the clerk's office and they come into community development and then they go to Parks and Rec, and so they kind of get bounced around. And so we are trying to clean this up to make that user experience a lot better, because this is not the time when you want to have an unpleasant and you want to have a very simple user experience. And so in looking at code, we are going to take the clerk somewhat out of the equation and just make it between community development and Parks and Rec, and so we'll have an OpenGov application. The clerk will still be like kind of the records manager, but we are providing records through the GIS and through the permitting process. And so what we can do is, as we put this online so it make it a little bit more easy to use, we can just basically provide a drop down, like where would you like to be buried, what cemetery, and it would have a Legion, and then we can adjust your fee schedule for that. So.
And then, of course, those individuals, we're going to have to verify that that's actually the thing that's going to happen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we will include you guys as users on that, so.
Okay, so since we're kind of into that, what we're doing is we're going from a $25 burial permit now, correct? That's the fee currently?
Yes.
So for a full-size casket, we're raising that to $500 for the permit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and so, and just, this has been vetted through planning and zoning pretty significantly, and our prices are very, very actually like cheap compared to most cemeteries around. We just have not updated them for a very, very long time. And if you're paying attention, most cemeteries, there's many cemeteries right now that are actually going under and out of business across the United States because just their fees have kind of not kept up. And so we do still want to make ours very reasonable. And we based, just to give you a little background, so when we're looking at columbaria and cremains, we're trying to make those so those are smaller, and we're just making it to break even points for us when we're buying like a columbaria and those things. And so yeah, we are just trying to have this generate some revenue, so it's not a hole that the city is kind of putting money into. And these fee schedules were vetted through planning and zoning and to do that. So
some of the fees were vetted. I have a question on the grave preparation and marker deposit. We spoke
Yep.
about that and talked
Yep.
about maybe cleaning that up.
Yep.
The deposit for the memorial marker, I understand,
Mhm.
because we have situations in the Legion where we've got a couple people buried by local families, and they have not provided memorial markers for them, one of them for over 15 years. So the marker deposit, I understand, because it was $100, and memorial markers now are upwards of $1,200 to $2,400, depending on what you want to get. My question is the grave preparation. I guess we talked about separating the marker deposit from a grave preparation, because the preparation you're talking about is actually after the burial. So it's like returning the grave site to a flat, level spot.
Right, and I did a little, because that language, so my recommendation would be to list that as a separate one called the site closure, where we go and confirm, because what's happening is that people are not following the rules, and they're leaving their grave sites mounded up, and then we have to pay someone hundreds of dollars to come and clear that off at our expense. And so this will just be another deposit to help make sure that they follow the rules and they leave that site as it should be, so we don't have to foot the bill with it in the end. And so my recommendation would be to call that a site closure deposit, and brackets would be for casket burials only. And then the fee would be $300, the deposit would be $300. So that's about how much it costs for us to call up someone in with an excavator and go scrape that off and then take all that away, so.
Go ahead.
Another question, so if I want to propose that change, are we going to do separate motions for each of the fee changes, or is it?
Can we, how do you want to do this? We could just make the suggestion.
If everyone's in agreement, I don't know if you guys have consensus, and we would just have that change as a site, because this isn't not an ordinance, it's a fee schedule, and so so my recommendation would be to create another item on there. It would be called site closure deposit for casket plots only for $300.
Okay. Is there any disagreement with that? I think, Councilmember Finch.
Yes, so you have to have, let's see if I'm following this. You have to get a $500 permit for burial, and you have to do a $500 reservation, and you have to do a $1,000 marker deposit.
No, the reservations only if people want to basically purchase a plot for way down the road in advance. So basically, the 500, in order to get buried, you just need to purchase, like if you're buying like a casket plot, it would be $500 for that site.
So how much were these costs last year? And now you're wanting to bump them up to this amount?
Basically, the only thing we charged for was, the plot was $25. And so, and our deposit was $100, which is our marker deposit, which is $100, which people would give us that, and then they'd walk away because it was cheaper than buying a headstone. So that's why we have, I don't know, hundreds of headstones that don't have markers there.
So how do senior citizens on fixed incomes or low income that were born and raised here afford to get buried at this rate?
This is actually a very good rate.
I understand that.
So do you want, so my question is, but the taxpayers of Seward are going to subsidize those burials. So that's what's been happening. Or subsidizing the headstones to go in. So that's where we're trying to put fees in so that it's somewhat paying for itself, and it's not being paid for out of taxpayer dollars.
Okay. Other,
I've got a whole plethora.
okay, well, look, Councilmember Calhoun, did you
I'm
have
good.
anything else?
Nope, I'm
Okay.
good with-
Okay, Councilmember Finch, what you got?
I'm just looking at right here where you remove the cemetery fees from the clerk's office and add them to the Parks and Rec. So who issues a permit? Then you move RV, mobile homes, camper permits from community development to the clerks. You just switch those around. Why not put those to Parks and Rec since it'll be in the RV park?
Because the camper park permit is different. That's by code. It falls underneath we're just doing some housekeeping there. Or the clerk's office is actually by code. They're the ones, if someone wants to start like a camper park in city limits, they have to get it through the clerk's office. And so it was just in the wrong in the wrong space.
The 100% markup on the harbor worker annual fee, the 100% markup on the slip owner's annual fee, and 50% on the annual parking pass. That's going to affect a lot of the seniors that go down fishing and the low income that want to go down fishing. I mean, what are we going to do when everybody knows when the reds come in, it's an hour before, an hour and a half after high tide? Is the guy with the little computer program that I pulled going to be down there hitting all the snaggers that are there for 10 minutes for $5? We need to change that to, 3 to 6 hours for the $5 and 6 to 12 for the 10 and then 12. There should be at least a 3-hour free parking so people can go down there shopping without paying $5, or go down fishing for 3 hours.
Do you want to make a motion?
These are just the changes I'm seeing.
I think the best option would be to tackle those one at a time with motions, or as we just did with the burial permits, and all agreed. So if you wanted to start with the annual passes, we could start there.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
if I may.
Vice Mayor.
Can I please have an idea how many motions we're going to be looking at and voting on? Just because it's 9:45 and I'm
Yeah,
thinking
and
that.
I would like to see this come back to us with what last year's cost was and what the proposals are. You guys will see what I'm looking at. I don't mind the parking fees going up $10, but $100 is gonna hurt a lot of people and businesses.
Councilmember.
So would you like to propose that this gets pushed to the next meeting?
I would think with that.
Okay, that's a motion?
I'm gonna put a motion and this gets postponed to the next meeting so we can see what the before and after costs are.
I'll get a second first, if there's a second.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded, but administration's got their hand up.
Question for Councilmember Finch. Are there like are all your changes in any specific categories that we can adopt?
Well, the fire department haven't gotten to, but Parks and Rec, the cemetery, fire department, and like it says on the front, 7% sales tax added uniformly to fees that are not exempt. What are the exempt fees? This is all pretty vague.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to postpone this to the next meeting, I guess, for more information. And is that going to, I'm asking administration.
I think that's what we're working through in our head right now.
Yeah, is this going to affect, because it should begin at the beginning of the year or something? Because we can stay here, we can go all night, I think. Let's let administration figure this out.
If we take a tackle on her.
Yeah, as, we would be happy to get this back to you in the first meeting in January, so January 8th, so that we are only about 8 days in arrears there, so I think that should be fine.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone till January 8th. Any more discussion? We could vote on that. Vice Mayor.
Can I just ask, what is it that we're going to get between now and January 8th? And then what does that actually answer any of your questions? Because I'm assuming there were some changes that you were wanting to make, not necessarily because of what it was before. So, I mean, I'm just wondering if we're going to actually gain anything by.
When you're I'm looking at stuff here anywhere from 100% to 300% rate increase on here, right here.
Okay, and I'm sorry.
We need to be more reasonable and economical.
Okay, that's what I was getting at, because just getting this new information on January 8th isn't going to answer or change it, right? So I'm trying to figure out that, is what I'm trying to figure out. Because we could be back in the same spot we are right now on January 8th, having the same discussion, even if we have this new information.
Discussing postponement. Councilmember Wells.
To Councilmember Osenga, I believe that if what Councilmember Finch is asking is if we postpone this to January 8th, then he would personally have time to meet with administration and have his questions answered.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not to speak for you.
No, you're right, you're right.
Okay, Councilmember Barnwell has his hand up.
Since we're on the topic, should the administration also have some data that backs up prices for other communities? I think we've looked at it already, just to make sure that that's available also.
On what specific items?
Parking in particular.
Okay. Is parking, is it the main one, or is that the only one? Or
Is there other?
Are there other items?
Councilmember Barnwell?
I would think burial fees might be appropriate also.
Okay. All right.
So we have a comparison.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on postponement? Okay, Mr. Crick?
Okay, voting to postpone Resolution 2023-134. Barnwell?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Kreitz?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has been postponed to January 8th, 2024.
Okay, we only have one more item and then comments, but there's request for a break, so we're going to take another 5-minute break.
No, but you're not sitting over there now.
Okay, we are back.
You're not sitting over there now.
I'll call us back to order, so we can get on with this. We have only one more item. It's 9:51, sorry. The last item that was removed from the consent agenda that we need to work on is Resolution 2023-139. Mr. Clerk, would you please read that?
Resolution 2023-139, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with T2 Up Safety for the purchase of parking enforcement software and equipment for 3 years for a total cost of $37,021 and partnering with Up Safety for collection services and appropriating funds.
Okay, this is on page 58. I need a motion to approve and a second, please.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-139.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to invite Tyler of Parks and Rec to come up and speak to this resolution.
Thank you.
Hey guys, appreciate the time we put into this, and this is, we've talked about this twice before, but T2's Up Safety basically allows us to incorporate with our current pay stations. It gives us the ability to basically scan the license plate. It'll tell us if that car is allowed to be in the lot, when they're allowed to be in the lot. It prints the ticket directly from the phone, and it puts it all into a system that we have access to and that they manage for us. That gives us the software to track if it hasn't been paid, how long it hasn't been paid for, and then they also can send out letters for us at 30, 69 days for late notice payments, and they also have a collections agency ability where basically they would take 30% of the revenue they collected from collections, and it's certified federally for collections, following all the standards and practices that are required by law for that. And so this covers all of that ability for us to enforce parking. So, okay.
Okay, thank you. Who removed this? This was Councilmember Wells, so would you like to?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Tyler, first, I appreciate all the work that you do put into this, so please don't take what I'm about to say personal. I'm not going to support this resolution because $37,000, right? Just recently, when some of us were in Japan, and I'm going to use, first I want to say, over here Hokkaido was an amazing place. If you get the opportunity to go, you absolutely should. One thing that I noticed walking around there was pay lots, something that we all notice every time we leave the city of Seward, whether we go to Anchorage, we go to Lower 48, they're pay lots. They all, the majority of the most successful ones, they have a gate. You pull up, you take a ticket. We've all done this millions of times. You pull in, you park. When you leave, you walk up to the machine, you stick the ticket in, you pay, you get a receipt, you scan the receipt, you pull out. Well, I don't understand. We have 2 pay stations. I would like to postpone this until the next meeting. I would like to make a motion to postpone this vote until the next meeting so that administration will have time to dig and do some investigation into the wholesale costs to put in automatic gates, to update our current fee payment stations, to see if there's software that will link to the automatic gates, and therefore would be saving us a ton of, well, labor for one, and we wouldn't have a vehicle then running around playing meter police.
Okay, so do you want to make that
Yes, sorry.
motion in a concise
Yes, I apologize. I'd like to make a motion to postpone this until the next meeting. Period.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. You've given your rationale on that. Discussion?
Madam Mayor? Sorry,
Yes.
just one question for you guys. Postponing this, what kind of a, down the road, if it's later approved hypothetically, what time crunch does that put you in to get this into place if it's postponed for 2 weeks?
Yeah, my conversations with Poppy, who is our rep with T2, who I've been working with on the quotes and things like that, she basically said it's a 3 to 4 month lead time to get the equipment up here, to get trained on it to go through installing it and making sure that it's linked correctly. And so 3 to 4 month lead time puts us in March, April timeframe. So we're still good, but we're close at that point. We're cutting it a little bit close. And just so you guys know, T2 does have gate systems available. I can't tell you an exact number, but when we compared the cost, it was significantly more than, and I know we'll save on cost with other stuff, but it was significantly more.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barma.
Yeah, I recall when you were here last time that UpSafety had some data on how efficient their system is. Something like 99%.
It wasn't UpSafety, it was Homer who uses this exact system. Homer uses the system, and they estimated 95% compliance using this system and 4 parking enforcement officers.
We are discussing
Sorry.
the motion to, I mean, that's okay, to postpone, not the actual resolution now, though.
Right, but this helps me make the
I know,
decision.
I know. It was just a word. Just a word. Okay, no, seriously.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, motion to postpone, we will vote.
Okay, voting on the motion to postpone this resolution until January 8th, 2024. Kreitz,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Barnwell,
No.
Wells,
Yes.
Osenga,
No.
Calhoun,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
No.
That motion has passed. 4 yes votes.
So we've got a whole lot on January 8th now. Okay, but maybe it'll be more thoroughly vetted. This brings us to citizen comments. This is the time when you get a 5-minute limit, and there's no sign-in. So all you gotta do is raise your hand, and I'll call on you, and you come up. Bruce, and the usual name and inside, outside. Lonnie, I know.
Yeah, Bruce Joff, outside city limits. Oh, you had your hands full tonight. I can understand how difficult some of these decisions are when you're trying to decide what is best for your fellow citizens, some who are in better positions, some that are in worse positions economically than yourselves, and trying to be fair and equitable and compassionate, all those things. I can say that I think from this chair, I said before that I'm seeing costs increase in our industry. I work across the state of Alaska. We employ craft people from, I think, 7 different crafts. Wages have gone up astronomically. The costs for housing of those craft people around the state has gone up astronomically. I don't want to put numbers together because they don't mean anything. They're going up so fast that it makes my head spin. There are 2 ways to look at this, probably a lot of ways. You can pretend that we're still living in the past and object to the changes, or you can adjust and adapt and figure out how to pay for them. In Seward, over my 50 years here, I've seen costs go up a lot. Wages have gone up and everything else has gone up. Where's the limit? I don't know. But we cannot be stuck in the past. And if costs for electric utility increase, you heard your expert, Mike Hubbard, say that the rates in Maine, or, which is another place I think a lot of us admire, are going up astronomically. Other places around the country, the same thing. And you can see everything. I don't know if it's inflation. I'm not an economist. I mean, I think we all are maybe Saturday night economists, but I always felt I didn't buy hamburger if I didn't have enough money in my pocket. That was the way it worked. And the city of Seward is not broke. The city of Seward is still in a catbird position. And using the economic the benefits that Seward has, the businesses that we have to leverage the future, it doesn't matter whether we make every perfect decision or not. You know, we can argue about or discuss whether the transmission line upgrade was timely or not. It's there. You know, somebody will benefit from it. I hope all of us will somehow or another. But, you know, if we've got the costs, figure out a way to pay them, would be my advice. It's worked for me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Daryl? Daryl might still need help getting up there.
I need help. Daryl Schaefer, Meyer, inside the city. I appreciate you folks. I know you had a tough process to go through tonight, and I admire you for sitting through that and doing that. I do. I mean, I've been on the deliberative body. I worked for federal legislatures. I've been on staff. I've been all kinds of different roles through my life in deliberative bodies and working on staff for deliberative bodies and working for the helping work for the most exclusive club in the world, the U.S. Senate. So I know the challenges that you have, and I appreciate you for all that you do. I just want to put in a little context for the listening public, if there are any out there this late at night, what you folks did, and I'm not going to criticize you for what you did, because you came through that process, you listened to your expert, you analyzed it the best way you could, and I'm not going to fault you for that. I would have hoped that you would have built your budget first and then did your rate study around that, so you know what you need to spend the money on, because it wasn't based upon your 2024 budget that you adopted a year ago. But that being said, it's neither here nor there at this point. But just in context, we have seen adopted tonight a 50% rate increase to the base rate of your electric bill. 50%. That, I've never seen that happen before, but, you know, be that as it may, it's happened tonight. Mike Hubbard was talking about 15% increases in Maine. That's nothing. It pales. What you did tonight is vastly larger than that. So we've had a 50% rate increase to the base rate. Your base rate right now is 11 cents. You just increased it to 17 cents starting January 1. So the bills that everybody's going to get in the 1st of February, everybody, you know, I don't know where the cost payer, cost causer report came in, because you hit it every rate class. There was no apportionment to rate classes. That's normally what happens in a rate study where you do a cost of service study. That didn't happen here. You hit everybody uniformly and equally tonight. And I guess that's been done. So we have a 17-cent base rate on top of the COPA rate that we get, which is the Chugach rate, the costs of power and the city has to pay, plus a few other things that Chugach has to account for. So we go from a 21 cent to a 27 cent effective kilowatt hour. I did the math for a company that I'm very well acquainted with, and that's the Sea Life Center. You effectively raise their rates $300,000 with this rate increase a year. I don't know how they're gonna. I have a finance committee meeting tomorrow with the board. I don't know how they're gonna absorb that. That's 8 or 9 positions at the pay rates down there at the center. That's just a huge thing to deal with. I mean, I don't know what it's going to do to the other large consumers, your state prison over there, the JAG, the fish plant, a few other industries that you have here. I hope it doesn't result in more businesses leaving town and closing down. I mean, I just hope not. But you made your decision, and I'm not going to fault you for that. I know you had to look at it, you deliberated about it, and you discussed it, and you did what you thought was required of the city. Now, on a more happy topic, I don't know how many of you were able to go to the community Christmas choir. It was marvelous. This town has a beautiful choir. I mean, I really truly say that, and I've listened to lots of choirs in my 74 years, and I just couldn't get over enough how well they sounded, and it's great, and I hope you get a chance to see it. I made I videoed what I could, and I'm going to give a copy of that to the mayor so she has it. What a marvelous thing, and she did a marvelous job. I mean, it made me just beam and feel great all over for being able to participate and see that last Thursday night. So, wonderful town we live in. Thank you. Let's go home. Be safe.
Thank you, Darrell. Thank you for the compliment. Anyone else? No one else? Okay. I'll bring it to council and administration comments and responses to citizen comments administration. You may go first. Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a lot of work to do off of some of the postponements from tonight, but looking forward to get more of that information for you. And don't forget, we have our city council member retreat that first Saturday in January. Maybe the second. No, first Saturday in January. So on January 6th, so we'll have an agenda come out for that shortly. And happy holidays, everybody. I hope you all enjoy. We'll see you in 3 weeks.
Thank you. Mr. Bickley.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations again to the wrestling team. This has been a really amazing year for like Seward sports, and even though like we're a small town with schools that are like way down in population, and you should see the list of teams that they beat in wrestling. These are big schools, and I mean with football and cross country and swimming and just like all of our sports anyway, I just think like this is something that it's great to celebrate, that we're a small town and we're pretty chippy and we kind of fight above our weight class like we do in a lot of other things. And so anyway, just congratulations to the wrestling team. I know we'll have that coming at another council meeting, and so I'm looking at Jody just because her son is on that team, so and he's one of the state champions. So anyway, I just think that's something that we can, it's exciting, it's good to celebrate. And yeah, and I just I want to thank, I went shopping this week, and I just want to thank those businesses that are clearing their sidewalks. It's one of those things when you're out shopping and you notice it. We did send out letters to people just for their uncleared sidewalks, and we are monitoring that. But I just do appreciate the work that goes in when you walk into a business that does have a very clean sidewalk, and that makes a difference as you're shopping. And so I just want to say thanks to the businesses that are doing that. It's much appreciated, and that's it.
Okay. I'll start with Councilmember Kreitz.
I do want to thank Becky Dunn, talking about the radio station now, giving the local kind of things that are going on since we don't have the newspaper any longer, so I appreciate them doing that. And I enjoyed the Alaska Long Trail presentation. I actually was not even aware that that was a thing, so that enlightened me. And I do want to, we talked about the directive about low income. I guess just kind of want to see that happen pretty soon. Would be great. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnwell.
I'll echo Jason's thoughts on the sport. The teams that wrestling team was D2 too, which is the first time that the city of Seward's ever won a D2 for wrestling. And I think they doubled, didn't they double the score from Haynes? Haynes was number 2.
It was like 50 points difference.
That's pretty neat.
We got 184 and they were like at 130 something.
Yeah, that was pretty exceptional, and it is amazing our sports. The swim team, I was talking to Solomon this weekend, and they're up like the parents said that they're operating with all of the big schools in the whole state. Our little team of 6 or 8 guys or people are competing with East High School and Diamond and Juneau. And coming up with a state title, so it's pretty phenomenal. I don't know what the heck's going on with our kids in this town. They've always been scrappy, but they're amazing. I also want to sorry, drawing a blank. The electrical thing was a tough one for us. I think it's emotionally draining. Thanks for the support from the public on that. I know we've all had our differences, but I hope we can all agree that we're all trying to do the best. The other thing I want to say is the Parks and Rec. Thanks for Russ coming in today.
I was just there today, and it's phenomenal. They have so much good energy right there in that place right now, and it's such an asset to our community. And he and Mel, the whole team over there is just doing a wonderful job. So thanks for that. All right, have a great Christmas.
Okay, Councilmember Fish.
I'd like to say, great job on the Seward swim team and the Seward wrestlers. I mean, good students, awesome coaches, but there might be something in the water. We'll leave it like it is, okay? I'd like to also say thanks for all the public input. I know I'd like to personally say publicly to Rob Montgomery, thank you for all he's done while he was here. A lot of the public has forgotten what he did to help this town and the crisis that it was in when he came here, and I commend him for his expertise. It would not have been done without his supervision. And I want him to know he's more than welcome to city council meeting anytime.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wells.
Let's make it short. Happy winter solstice. And on New Year's Eve tonight, we all know that one song that we're all going to hear. And I hope that we can all take the opportunity to soak it in, come back in the new year with a new outlook on life. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ditto to all the sports champions. I think it's just, we're just getting used to it, so we expect it now. And I want to give a shout out to the American Legion Auxiliary. Great job that they did with their Toys for Tots program last Saturday. Appreciate the fire department from Bear Creek and Seward that supported that with their fire trucks for the parade. The kids just,
it's great.
They love that stuff. It's great, and it was a lot of fun there Saturday morning. So, and you know, I think I'd like to just take an opportunity to thank everybody in the community for what we've kind of gone through. I know it's been divisive this last year, and hopefully through this Christmas season we can remember what that's really all about, and we can sort of get past any of the personal issues that we might have had. Hopefully we all understand that we're trying to do the best that we can, whether it's the folks sitting at this dais or the people sitting out there talking to us on a daily basis. You know, we have a special community, and I hope that this new year we can all look at ourselves and come back with a more positive thought in some cases, and just really look to the future and what's going to be best for us, and appreciate each other, because unfortunately we are losing what I will affectionately call Old Seward. And even though people don't know that, I'm a little bit of Old Seward with an affiliation since 1962. So, you know, let's just kind of look at our community and the special community it is, and try to help each other kind of get past this last year a little bit, and just appreciate what we have, and appreciate some of the people we have as long as we have. That's all.
Vice Mayor Osenga.
Congratulations to the swim team and all the sports teams for Seward High School. I think this has been a fabulous year for them. And I would just like to thank everybody for the comments of goodwill, and I think that there's no harm in bringing that up. So thank you for those comments, you guys. I think it is kind of a hard job up here, and it's not easy, but you get through it, and then you do it again next week or the next meeting. So everyone have a Merry Christmas and a safe New Year, please.
Merry Christmas.
Wow, okay, well, I had a whole lot of other things to say, but I just want to thank Daryl and his wife for being there at the concert, and hopefully people will hear that when we have our April 4th spring concert, we'll get the crowd, but we had standing room only, and it was wonderful. But also, as a church musician that I am, and also the choir, this is the roughest week, you know, for me. So I've been playing, and if you see me rubbing my hands, that's why. But Saturday, we said pretty much final goodbyes to one of the sweetest, most wonderful people in Seward, my mom. And several from here that are in the room were there and got to hear the stories. But, you know, my mom was born here in 1930 and never lived anywhere but Seward. And she used to say, people come and people go, but I'm still here, you know? And she was here till right at the end because she was at Mountain Haven. And a lot of people, you know how these funeral memorial services go, people share and they stand up and share. And everybody knew my mom. And one of the prevailing themes was her spirit and her joy. And that's what we need to carry through, because even when she would be sometimes screaming at the wind that was blowing for an entire month, you know, she would still be smiling in the next moment. And we have to continue that kind of a legacy, I think. And with that, I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you in January. Seriously, it happens. If you don't watch this, this happens.
This is a community thing, Madam
Yeah,
Mayor.
go ahead.
I apologize.
Go ahead.
Just a
It's a
reminder
Legion
that
thing.
for anybody that needs it, the American Legion will be serving a community Christmas meal on Christmas Day from 1:30 till 4:30, and we also will deliver meals to anybody that needs a meal delivered in the community.
Thank you for that, because that is a wonderful thing. And with that, I'll adjourn us at 10:17.